Evening, beautiful people. It is the Sunday show after dark, and it is Seth Andrews and the legendary Forrest, Valkai. Hey, brother, good to see you.
When did I get there? It's good to see you, too. I don't know why I deserve such a title.
We just, I think we both just dashed in at the last second. I just got off the tennis court, and so I'm sitting here like, trying to reset, and you were doing some studio makeover, and you jumped into the chair at the last second.
But I'm
he's
here.
Are you one of those guys, though? Are you one of those guys that I have to tell you? Because I know some people like this, and they're high energy people, and they do a lot at the same time. But if there's a 7 o'clock meeting, you have to tell them that the meeting is at 6:45. Like, are you that guy?
I'm usually like I will make it on time, but like it may be right the fuck on time. You know what I mean? Like that's my big issue.
He flies in with his bat wings out of the blue.
Usually a little early. More often than not, when I log on to this show, it's like maybe 10 minutes before we start. But like Arden will tell you, there have been more than a few times where, like today, I literally sit down and we start. Like I'm here when it's like 7 o'clock.
Well, it's not like you need a lot of prep. You do a lot of this anyway, but it's going to be a good night. We've got a switchboard filled with calls. Theist callers get priority. I like to mix it up. I like to talk to non-believers as well, but it sort of depends on the theist calls, doesn't it? Sometimes you're like, well, that's a thoughtful presentation of a position or a question or a challenge, and other times I literally want to take a fork and stick it into my eye. I just like, please make it stop. And so you just never know, right? When you click that button, you never know what you're going to get.
You don't.
So
you don't. Maybe they're going to tell you to pray for 3 days. Who knows?
Everything else good in your world? I mean, besides the, the daily existential dread that we've all been feeling. Natalie was scrolling today and I almost like, honey, I'm going to hide your phone. Because she's sitting there and I can see the veins coming out of her head. And she's like, oh, my God, I can't believe it. After the official White House account had posted that video that said ASMR, and it showed chains being laid out on the tarmac and some anonymous immigrant being shackled and going up the stairs of the plane and into the plane to be shipped off to wherever It had a very international slave trade kind of vibe about it. And of course, ASMR is allegedly, supposedly supposed to produce pleasurable responses through stimuli. So the White House's official message is people are supposed to get off or feel physical stimulation, pleasurable stimulation by watching a shackled human being be carried away and flown back over the border. And I just could not believe. I'm like, on what timeline do we live? On what universe do we exist? Are we on some kind of reality game show? Did you see the clip, Forrest?
Yeah, I did. It's cruelty lo-fi. And like that is the whole joke. We are taking such pleasure in the fact that we are ripping people's families apart, that we are taking people who were here for legitimate or illegitimate reasons, whatever, but or I should say illegal or whatever, but it was just these human fucking beings who are trying their best to come here, to forge a new life and to get a better life for their families, to find freedom. It's wild to me that the same people who brag about this being the freest country in the world and everyone wants to come here is so just cruelly opposed to the concept of anybody coming here. And they say, oh, we should do it legally. Okay, that's incredibly difficult. And also, you want to try to lump in all these immigrants. Oh, they're also illegal, and that means they shouldn't be treated as humans. You're telling me that you wouldn't break the law to save your own life, to protect your family, to build a better future for your children? You wouldn't, but because remember, the whole like illegal immigration law, it's not like you're murdering somebody. It's a civil law. It's the same as like jaywalking. It's that kind of shit. It's not like a major criminal offense. It's as if you just filled out a form wrong, or it's you can get a traffic ticket, you can go speeding on the highway, or you can cross the border illegally, and that's much less severe. You know what I'm talking about? And so these people are talking about these people who are coming into this country, escaping oppression, escaping violence, escaping a drug cartel, escaping whatever else it may be, trying to make a better future for themselves and their children. That is the American dream that I was taught of when I was a kid, is people coming from all around the world being a part of this melting pot because they want a better future for themselves, but more importantly for their families and for their children. And they will do anything it takes to get it. And here we have people who are pretending like fucking overstaying a visa is on par with murder, and therefore these people need to be let out like wild animals in shackles. And it's just a poor excuse for this blind fucking racism.
Well, it's it's a contradictory argument. Are they coming to drain the welfare state? Are they coming to just suck up everybody's tax dollars and be parasites? Mm-hmm. Or have they come to work American jobs that legal citizens are supposed to have? Because I can't, which one of those arguments are you going to use? And you're right.
Right.
When I was a Fox News Christian, I remember thinking, well, the illegals. And I didn't bother with context. I didn't understand my own privilege. The idea that somebody was endangering me, that we would starve, that we would be at the mercy of abusers, or, people with machine guns might roll their Jeeps into our village and massacre us all. I just didn't have that human context. And when we see the photographs of people who are, their children are sitting on their shoulder in neck-high, fast-running river water, desperately trying not to drown, how can you not look at that and have a measure of real compassion and empathy? And the death of compassion and the culture of cruelty are probably one of the biggest alarm bells going on right now. I mean, how can you say, hey, ASMR, look at this cat in chains, man. It's awesome. This will stimulate your pleasure centers. That's fucked up.
What's crazy to me is it's not just even that. It's not just the lack of compassion or emotion or humanity. You see this person trying to keep their child above water as they ford this river, defying death to make a better life for their family. And you don't just not feel the compassion. You don't just not feel the humanity. You take it one step further and you put fucking razor wire underwater where you can't see it to hurt these people and drown them, which is what fucking Greg Abbott's dumbass did. And so, you have genuine evil because these people are different, because they are migrants, because they are, which, by the way, migrant and illegal, it means brown. Is what it fucking means. Because you see these same things when we talk about, you have these politicians getting up there showing just pictures of generic Mexican person saying, do you want this as your neighbor? Does this look like your neighbor? What they're saying is, don't you want a white community? It's the exact same fucking thing. And people pretending like it isn't are fucking disgusting. That is all it is. That's the reason why Native Americans are also being questioned and interrogated by ICE. That's the reason why people are being interrogated by ICE for speaking Spanish. You can speak Spanish as an American citizen. Did you know that? That's actually a thing you can do. And yet, for some fucking reason, speaking any language other than English or having dark skin or dark hair is now a reason to be investigated and interrogated. In the biz, we call that profiling, and it's wrong. But that's what we're doing because it makes it easier. And we're already setting up now Guantanamo Bay, which has never held more than a few hundred people, now being set up to hold thousands of people. A sort of camp, if you will, where we are concentrating a particular ethnic group together in order to find out how to deal with them. Some sort of camp of concentration, a concentration camp, if you will. And we're also looking into these horrific fucking prisons in El Salvador and trying to make deals there to build camps and prisons there as well, so we can continue to ship people there. And let's not pretend like this makes any fucking sense financially or logistically either. While we are purging the federal government of thousands of legitimate employees, while we are doing this, we're also going to pretend like we can safely and humanely process millions of migrants, millions of Mexican Americans, millions of illegals, when with the capacity that we have now, before Elon Musk crazy shit ass came through here and started gutting departments with no legal authority to do so, by the way, before that started happening, we weren't able to do that. We did not have the manpower. We did not have the legal power. We did not have the power to get through that level of bureaucracy. And you're telling me that now, with like a fraction of the staff and none of the intelligence, we are now going to find a way to process these people in a way that is safe, effective, and humane, and not just be fucking murdering people, especially when you have the oh God, it was the Attorney General that just put out that memo, I think, that said that we are going to bring America back to the glorious days of using the death penalty. And among the reasons to use the death penalty were being here illegally. Really? Nobody's like, I don't think it's reasonable to string conspiracy theories, but I think it is reasonable to pay the fuck attention and be worried for your neighbors, whether they be citizens or not, because what they are is human motherfucking beings, and they deserve some compassion and some rights. But maybe I'm a radical leftist for thinking that.
Donald Trump was the one who came forward, and this was decades ago, demanding, I think he bought a full-page ad in one of the New York newspapers demanding the death penalty for the Central Park Five.
Yep.
And they were accused of raping the jogger in Central Park. There were forced confessions. There were all kinds of problems with the case. Well, Donald Trump, who was not in the jury, did not hear the evidence that was presented. He just jumped out and said, bring back the death penalty. Well, it turns out that those 5 guys were not only not guilty, but they were exonerated and I think paid a legal sum by the city of New York for their wrongdoing against them. Someone else's DNA matched and was pronounced guilty. So we found out that the Central Park 5 were totally innocent, and yet Donald Trump refused to say he was wrong. And he continues to bang the drum that the Central Park 5 deserve to be executed. Now, imagine lethal injection, the electric chair. I don't care. I mean, I think some people actually still do firing squads, whatever. Imagine that in the hands of a man who saw the evidence, saw the courts reverse, saw a restitution paid to those wrongly accused, and he still refused to change his mind. He just wants to kill 5 guys. It just blows my mind. Just blows my mind.
So. You don't have to imagine what it would look like. We saw exactly that this summer with Marcellus Williams. His man was accused of, I believe it was murder, served in prison for decades. I don't remember the exact details off the top of my head. It's been a minute, but like this dude was in prison for quite some time for a crime that he did not commit. And not only did the prosecutor in that case come out and say, hey, we fucked up. This isn't right. We didn't do it right. The evidence is bad. Like, this isn't appropriate anymore. Like, there's a major so the person who was in charge of trying to get this guy sent to the electric chair and succeeded came out and was like, yo, don't do it. But also the victim's family came out and said, hey, if you execute this dude, we will not have justice because the actual person who killed our child is now loose because this guy's dead and you're not looking anymore. Everybody in charge, the most interested parties in trying to get this man executed, all came out and said, do not fucking execute this guy. The evidence is beyond clear that this man is innocent. We can't do this. And yet, Governor of Missouri, fuck you. I want to see a man dead, and that's what I'm going to get. And sure enough, Marcellus Williams was killed in, I believe, September of last year. Murdered by the state for a crime he didn't commit, because it is better to have death than justice in this country. And Donald Trump is a great example of that. It's more important for his ego to be right than for justice to be done. It is more correct and more appropriate for him to feel that he got the blood that he needed than for actual justice to be served. And we see that even just with the fucking, I still remember the hurricane. He said the hurricane was going to hit some town in Alabama or whatever. All the meteorologists and climate scientists said that wasn't going to happen. They produced a map showing the path of the hurricane, and his dumbass took a Sharpie and drew an extra little blump on it to show that the hurricane's going to hit this town that he said. He was so upset that the weather disobeyed his direct orders that he had to embarrass himself on fucking national TV. That is the kind of person we're dealing with right now. And it's absolutely disgusting.
Two more thoughts real fast, and I promise we will get to the switchboard, but I always enjoy the opening sort of rant monologue. I like to see Forrest. You just literally tee him up, and then you sit back and watch the magic happen.
Don't you dare blame this on me. This was a two-way thing.
But the cruelty, I think, also extends to Ukraine, right? You see Russia smashing its way into Ukraine. The documentary footage that is they're having to sneak it out of Ukraine. Is horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. And then you've got people like Donald Trump and his minions blaming Ukraine. It's very victim blaming. You know, oh, I'm sorry, the rape victim was provocatively dressed. It's her fault. It's really that kind of an argument. There was a post. Now, kids, you want to ask your parents about who James Taylor is. But James Taylor, the famous singer-songwriter, been around for since the 60s. Well, he's not known for being political, but he is known for his music and for being a great lyricist. And he posted something on his Facebook page. He just took a bold stand, and it's obvious this was written by a lyricist. I pulled it up here. It said this: "Thoughts on Ukraine. Were we wrong about Zelensky, the hero of Ukraine? Were we wrong to feel the brotherhood of freedom in their struggle to resist the unprovoked attack upon their young nation? When they fought the bully Putin to a standstill with righteous resistance, when they stood up to the tyrant and stoically paid the price in patriots' blood, were we not thrilled at their courage? How do we now turn away? To stand by, mute, and cowed as the men who would be king, Putin, Trump, and Musk, huddle in their fortress and decide the fate of nations, shutting out the people they betray. Is this what has become of the cradle of liberty and the home of the brave, that we slide the hidden dagger in the back of those who were our champions, while our allies in the defeat of Hitler and Stalin witness our betrayal in disbelief?" It was posted on James Taylor's own Facebook page. It's actually been turned into like a screenshot, a poster under or over his signature, and it's worth sharing. And I'll link it in the chat comments. But he summed it up for me, Forrest. Why are our hearts not broken over the injustice and the tragedy? And when did Putin become some sort of admirable figure? The New York Post actually had a headline on its front page. Putin had said, "This is a dictator." Fucking New York Post gets it, for Pete's sake. Forrest?
Yeah, it is crazy. And like even now, like Trump has come out and said that Zelensky is a dictator and that Ukraine started this war, which is just patently fucking absurd.
Yeah.
But it's maybe those are just, maybe we all misunderstood. It's hard to understand him with Putin's dick in his mouth. But like and then also we have the same issue with Gaza, where he's calling for real serious ethnic cleansing. He's just saying we need to get all those millions of people out of there. 1.5 million people, we just need to remove them. And then that can just be Israel, because that's the best way. Are you kidding me? Like, is that seriously the strategy? Is just remove the oppressed people so that way the oppressors can just in order to think that, you either need to be very stupid or a monster, and with Trump it happens to be both. And now we're on this issue with DEI hires as well, which is one of the reasons why we're firing so many people. Which, by the way, DEI, this premise that we're hiring unqualified people because we need to fill a quota. Who are we replacing all of these supposed DEI hires with? We got the head of the Pentagon now. We got the Secretary of Education now. We got this person in the FBI now who are all like either zero or maybe a couple of months of experience in their field, but they're white MAGA, and so they're getting the jobs, or at the very least they're just kissing Trump's ass. Like, it's either they are as white as the driven snow or they are a Trump sycophant. For me, hiring unqualified people that happen to serve your political purpose sounds an awful lot like the DEI that you're rallying against. Except the fact that it isn't actually DEI that's the problem. DEI is the new woke, is the new CRT, is the new political correctness. It's all these words that mean the N-word, but they can't say that on TV yet because they're already doing Nazi salutes. So I give it 6 months for one of these motherfuckers just drops a slur. But like that's, and I say one of these motherfuckers drops a slur as if fucking Nancy Mace didn't just scream transphobic slurs in the fucking, like, in Congress just to prove that she could and got away with it. And get away with it she did, because the person in charge just decided to leave his spine at home and was like, I'm not really up to date on LGBT slurs, so I don't know what's going on here. You know what you have in your fucking pocket right now? It's a magic machine that can look up literally fucking anything. And you could have checked, but you didn't, because that would be controversial. And Democrats don't like to do that. It's just so fucking lazy.
I was looking at the recently fired Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Charles Q. Brown, who Pete Hegseth had insinuated was just a DEI hire. Well, first of all, Trump brought him on in 2020. This is what they consider to be a DEI hire, okay? This guy flew over 3,000 hours as an Air Force fighter pilot, including 130 hours in combat. He has commanded the Pacific Air Force's U.S. Air Force's Central Command, 31st Fighter Wing, U.S. Air Force Weapons School, 78th Fighter Squadron. He's got a master's degree in aeronautical science, and they're calling him a diversity hire. That tells you.
And you know why? All you have to do is look at a picture of him, and you'll know exactly why they don't like him, because that really is what it is.
Okay, one more thing, and then I promise we'll do the phones. I just kind of like to banter.
No, this could be the show. This could be the show.
So, I just like to banter. I mean, is it this, or do you want to have some guy call up and try to talk about?
Right, Pete Hegseth, who, by the way, promised to stop drinking if he got the job, and then didn't. during press conferences, just housing a glass of whiskey just to make it through the press conference. But that's my thing. Like, you can't drink on the job. You're not a fucking airline pilot. You can't drink on the job. You know what I mean? You can't. That's a funny dig at airline pilots. I don't mean that. But like, I just like, the point is, like, anywhere else, tell me any job. Tell me a McDonald's job that you can go into the interview and be like, listen, I'll stop drinking if you hire me, and then not stop drinking and see what happens. But you can't get a fucking job flicking burgers, but you can get a job running the most lethal military on the planet. You can do that if you're drunk off your ass, but you can't fucking serve me crispy fries. So stupid.
Forrest and I are both on, I'm on an airplane 3 times next month. And of course, here I am watching, like, literally, we're watching them fall. They're flipping over. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, honey. I'm terrified. I'm supposed to go to, I'm speaking on the Capitol steps in Phoenix for Secular Arizona coming up on Thursday, March the 6th. I'm going to be at Florida Free Thought mid-March. Then I'm officiating a wedding in San Antonio. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I'm terrified of getting on a plane.
I think we talked about the last time you and I were on a plane together. I'm already very scared of flying. That fun fact about me, for everybody watching, I'm very scared of being on airplanes. And I am when things are good. I'm going to the Free Flow with You next month. In April, I've got Kansas City Oasis. In May, I've got We Can Reason in Canada. In June, I'm going to Borneo for a couple of weeks. I've got the Freedom from Religion Foundation in the Ozarks in July. I've got my schedule over here. I've got Baja Con in August. I've got Dragon Con in September.
Sedate the man.
I'm getting on several planes. I'm getting on at least 1 or 2 flights every single month for the rest of the year. The thing that keeps me calm is the fact that pilots aren't freaking out yet. I know that those dudes, like, pilots are the most absurdly well-trained and consistently trained people, like, on the planet. They want to get home too. They're not panicking. I'm not panicking. Well, I am panicking, but I'm trying not to. As soon as we get like start getting a critical mass of pilots refusing to fly, I'm not fucking flying, because like they know what's up.
I saw some video of oh look, they were improving technology on the flying car, and of course I'm like, I'm sorry, I exist around people who can't even stay in the white lines on terra firma. You're going to make them. You're going to make them a missile. Now, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think that's just one of those novelties.
Right.
Here's the question I meant to ask you to begin with.
Yeah. Okay. What keeps me calm? I should say, for everybody else who's a nervous flyer, there are around like 40 to 45,000 commercial flights around the country every single day. If there was a plane crash every single day, it would still be safer than driving. That keeps me sound. That helps.
I thought it was even higher than that. I thought the total number was closer to six figures, and that may include private aircraft. So I was talking to Nat about the culture that we live in. We know that Trump is already saying he's going to root anti-Christian bias out of government. So they're going through, and all what they call is anti-Christian bias is what you and I call room for everybody at the table. Not favoring one
freedom
religion.
Is what it sounds like.
Not having a state church is essentially what that is, right? And she's like, well, what happens if what you do is next? Like once they're done with the federal and state offices, what happens if then the oligarchs, the Zucks and the Elons and whoever owns all of the social media, YouTube, Google, et cetera, who already have a shit track record on this stuff, what happens if they decide that they're just going to lock down your channels because we now have hate speech laws and that you are now supposedly hating on Christianity? What if we institute a blasphemy law culture and you are among those? What happens then? And I thought, at first I thought, no, they'd never do that. And then I thought, they would absolutely do that, Forrest. Did you ever wonder, like, are they going to come after our channels at some point and just say, next?
Yeah, next time anybody ever, if you ever think the government wouldn't do that, yes, they fucking would, and there's probably a historical precedent for it. Like, don't forget, like, the reason why we have the whole phrase of, like, don't shout fire in a crowded theater, it was because some Yiddish-speaking socialists were passing out pamphlets about, like, I believe they were protesting the Second World War, and that was a thing that they were able to suppress these people's free speech, their right to protest. I don't remember the full details of that story. I may be missing something. Somebody fact check that. I guarantee you can find a better example if that one's wrong, but I don't think that it is. Like the government absolutely has done worse, and in the wrong hands will do worse again. As for me, as you know, my friend, am a very difficult person to shut up. And I remember back in 2020, standing out on the street corner with a Black Lives Matter sign. And there were many days I did it at least once a week for like a whole summer. I just stood there because I, at the time, was living in a white flight town and there was no real representation of that kind of thing. And there was many times when I was the only one standing out there all by my lonesome with a bunch of people who really didn't like me driving by, and many people who threatened me with all sorts of violence. One guy said that he's going to circle the block and come back, and so there he's going to shoot me. I was there for an hour. He never did come back, and I was very disappointed. But like, if anybody tries, I know this is the shit that, conservatives do all the time. Like, if they try to take away my free speech to be racist, I swear to God, I'll fight for my country. But honestly, it's the same thing. If we really, this anti-Christian sentiment thing, what they're describing is freedom. And if they try to take that away, I'm going to be the first one to stand right here and continue streaming and continue talking and continue holding up a sign on the street corner. And the same thing I would say if they tried to make religion illegal. If this was the bizarre atheist fascism that Christians like to fantasize about, if they tried to make it illegal to be a Christian, I'd be doing the exact same thing. I'd be right here saying, fuck you. People have the right to believe whatever they want to do, to talk about what they want to do, talk about, to spread the ideas they want to spread. That's the point of this whole free market thing. It doesn't mean you have to entertain everybody. I don't think you should have fascists and Nazis on your channel just because it's a free market of ideas. You shouldn't sell heroin at the farmer's market. You know what I mean? Just like, that's not a thing you should allow. But it doesn't mean that you need to stop them from being allowed to speak. It doesn't mean that you need to stop them from being allowed to have their opinions. It doesn't mean that you need to stop them from passing on their stupid ass literature. Fascists, especially like neo-Nazis, are legitimately, this is not just a flowery, actually the dumbest people on the planet. Imagine this idea of, and I know, just quick preamble, I know that there's people out there like, oh, everything you don't like is fascist and Nazis and blah, blah, blah. the thing about fascism is anytime you are limiting other people's freedoms and like trying to get everybody to come over to this box, what you are doing is setting a precedent of limiting freedoms. And the only reason you're okay with it is because they're freedoms that you are not currently using at that moment. And so you're cool with it. It will be your fucking freedoms next. And if it isn't next, it's eventually. Because the one thing about fascists and Nazis is there's always somebody who isn't fascist and Nazi enough for them. And that will eventually be their target. And so these fucking oxygen thieves, neo-Nazis and super right-wing fascists and all these things, these fucking, if they were any dumber, you have to water them twice a week. They are using the freedoms and protection that we intelligent people guarantee them, the right to a difference of opinion, the right to free speech, the right to speak up and protest. They're using these freedoms that guarantee them safety in a heterogeneous society to tell everybody that you should not have those freedoms and that we should not have a heterogeneous society. They want a society in which if they were saying something the government didn't like, they would be murdered for it. That is what they are actively fighting for, is to take away their own right to think and to speak and to disagree with impunity because they think that they have a system that they prefer until it turns against them, which it always fucking does. They are actually actively the dumbest people on the planet. And I don't understand how anyone takes them seriously.
You remind me of that guy. He was a filmmaker. He may be a comedian, Rob Bliss. This is back in 2020. He went to the most racist town in the United States. It's been called that because it's a sewer for racism. He went to Harrison, Arkansas, and he held up a Black Lives Matter sign and he rolled video. And the shit people yelled at him when they drove by, he got what you got. He got threats and he got people screaming, and just the loathing that was written on the faces and was just laced in the language of these people. And you thought, what a sad way to live, you know? Anyway, and there's video of that. Everybody can go and look it up. The guy's name is Rob Bliss, Black Lives Matter, Harrison, Arkansas. It will blow
I know the video.
Mind. It's
I think wild. I know the video you're talking about. Let me look it up.
I've got a full switchboard. I'm going to say it's Nasser calling from the Middle East. Are you with me? Am I saying your name right?
Yes. Hello.
Did I say your name correctly, Nasser?
You did. You did say it correctly. As correctly as I would need it
with
to
Seth and Forrest. What do you want to talk about? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I didn't expect to be the first caller. It's a little bit surprising here, but what I wanted to talk about was why should I not believe in God, and what are the good reasons for us to believe in any claim or positive claim that we have out there? I feel like it's quite necessary to go through a little bit of what I am and who I am and what I'm about, because even though I know it's irrelevant to what is true in the world, I do think that the context is needed for the way I'm going to be discussing this, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll take a little backstory. If we can get through it quickly, go for it.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick there. So I am from the Middle East. So Islam is being practiced here the most. I'm younger. I am still not even an adult, if that's okay. It just means that I am still very clueless about the ways of the world. And I am probably autistic, but I'm not diagnosed. The reason I say that is just because I am so confused by humans. Super confused. I mean, you guys just went in a whole rant earlier about the weird things that humans do that can be straight up evil. And I guess to that level, it could be normal to say why people are so different from me. Anyways, let's get to the point of why shouldn't I believe in a God? Because currently I believe in a God. But when I sit down to say, all right, what is the actual reason I believe in a God? There's nothing else other than, well, I've been taught this way. It is the community I'm in. And it had some positive connotations of what I am, like positive things in my life, but also some negative things that I'm going to talk about here later, not earlier. When I was younger, like 5, 6, 7, you would see the kids obviously being like, "Oh, girls have cooties," or 7, 8, 9 years old people would be like discovering that gay people exist and be like, "Oh, that's so icky." And during that time, I was always just confused, like, what do you mean? Girls are just girls. And when they said gay people are weird, I'm like, well, Christians exist and they are sinners too because they're not the Islamic, and you think they're not icky, but they think, like, I didn't understand that. I still can't understand. So right now, like I said, that's why I believe in a God still.
All right,
From what all I said,
hang
what
on,
questions
Nasser.
would you like
I
to go
need to
with?
dial.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna bring you back in. I'm gonna bring you back in. There are a lot of
Yeah, you
streamers
should.
on this lightning bolt. So what I've heard so far that I can sink my teeth into is that this is how you were raised, and it is what you have always known, and it kind of gives you comfort. So far, that's what I've gotten about your
Right.
reason to believe. Even though you have admitted that you can't really provide evidence, you can't prove it with any specific
Nope.
hard data. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. I do think that that's true right now, from what I know.
So your question to us is then, why shouldn't you believe in a God?
Um, More like, what are the good reasons to believe in anything? As I understand, Forrest is an evolutionary biologist who also teaches, and you, Seth, I believe I heard you say that you voice for audiobooks. I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong. Right?
Yeah,
So,
you're right. Yeah, he's the brains, like he's the substance, and I'm a little bit of style. That's how this
He's
duo
the
works.
brawn, is
We're
what
going to
it
buy
is.
a van. We're going to take it on the road. But I am going to defer to Forrest on this. What would be good reasons to believe or not believe? Forrest, Valkai, what do you think?
I think, Nasser, the two questions you asked, why shouldn't I believe in a God and why should I believe in anything? I think the answer is the same. The answer is evidence. There is no
right.
evidence for belief in a God. If there is evidence for belief in a thing, then you should believe in that thing. And it isn't always acceptable to say that you need like super sufficient evidence for every single possible claim, like because there's claims that you can't grab. Like I don't know enough about like physics to really grapple with the full breadth of the evidence for certain things in physics, because I'm not a physicist, but I know enough to make it make sense, and I know, more importantly, that it works. The fact that the theories that we have in physics can produce testable predictions that actually have results. Those things that I don't have to understand the theory, I don't have to understand the math. That's enough for me to understand, okay, this functions, and that's just for me as a
Right.
scientist. That's good enough. And other things, it really depends on the quality, or I should say the size of the claim as to the size of the evidence that you need. I can tell you right now that I had McDonald's before I, sat down here and started streaming. You can take my word for that. Or if you really want evidence, I can show you a receipt. I can show you a bank statement. I can show you a wrapper. I can show something like that. And that's some evidence. If I tell you that the moon is a spaceship piloted by gophers, then you need more than my receipt for my telescope that I looked at it. You know what I mean? Like, you need more than that. So extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. That is just a good standard to have. The bigger the claim, the more expensive it is. And the cost of that claim is evidence and reason and the kind of capital that we trade in the intellectual world. And so if you're asking why you shouldn't believe in a God, it's because you have no good reason to. There is no evidence that can be produced for a God that cannot easily and equally be used for any other God or any other supernatural claim at all. And it means the same nothing. However, if you want to know what to believe in any capacity, you need to figure out whether or not there's a good reason to believe it. And if there is, then you should. And that's the whole thing.
And I get as far as you made some really good points there. Is my sound fine right now, by the way?
Yeah, it sounds like you're breaking up a little bit. Let's see if the web catches up. Can you hear us okay, Nasser? I think we've got a sketch connection. Another thing, too, I would probably throw out is if you admit that, well, I'm a product of family and geography, what if you were born somewhere else, right? I mean, if you were born in a place with a different religious tradition and your parents were of that tradition and that's how you were reared, do you think you would be that? And would that make it just as true? Nasser, you still with me or did I lose you?
May he rest in peace.
I think he's gone. But it's an interesting question. Like, why? What's a good reason to believe something? And I think the word evidence it's kind of my go-to. It's kind of an easy one. I don't know if it's too easy. Is it an oversimplification to say I need to believe it because evidence? Is that an oversimplification? Because it sounds pretty good to me.
It does sound pretty good. And the issue is that like there's different kinds of evidence and there's different qualities of evidence. You know what I mean? And so like when people talk about evidence, a lot of times you get into this, I think it's called sea lioning, I think is this stupid debate strategy of demanding like a scientific paper for every single possible prove to me the sky is blue. Show me 5 papers that prove it. That's the evidence I need. And like it's like, no, just like evidence can be simple empirical, just like literally my eyes and my ears. Or you can also understand that there is such a thing as naive realism, the idea that your 5 senses will tell you everything there is to know about the universe, which isn't true. And you can look for something a little bit more serious. Or you can defer to people who do know what they're talking about. It's not an argument from authority to say that like the World Health Organization is saying this thing. It would be an argument of authority to say, I know a friend who's a doctor and he told me this. Okay, well, that's a problem because your doctor friend, she might be wrong. Who knows? You don't know what she's doing. But this governing body in the medical field is saying XYZ thing. The preponderance of evidence, the academic consensus, whatever. There are ways you can access these ideas and like kind of test your own against them. And if you don't believe them, that's okay. Not everybody with a degree in whatever is right all the time. But you need to have a good reason. And your good reason can't just be, well, I learned something different in 6th grade and I never changed my mind. Sorry. There's just more to life than that. And if you're not going to specialize in a thing, you don't have to be ashamed of it, but you should be ashamed of it if you're going to take a stance that is fundamentally diametrically opposed to the people who do fucking specialize in that thing and dedicate years of their lives to doing it.
Well, what I like about Nasser's approach, at least in the call, was he seemed refreshingly self-aware that he was a product of his culture. And whatever that part of the world is, he's like, well, it was kind of how I was raised. So that's kind of my default. There was a kind of a wink of self-awareness that I find it, even if, it's a little bit frustrating sometimes because I'm like, well, if you're only doing this because of, family and geography, come on, take the next steps. But for him to be self-aware and honest enough to do that, I was like speaking to someone the other day. And they said, it gives me comfort. And even if it was proven that it wasn't true, I would still be a Christian. And there was part of me that was screaming in my mind at them, why the hell would you still be something if you know it's debunked and false? But there was another part of me that thought, okay, because you've just said out loud what a lot of people have either kidded themselves about or they simply won't be honest about outwardly. And that's, for me, it's about having a structure of fiction that gives comfort. It's familiar. It's a narrative that helps me get through the day. I paint the silver lining, but at least the silver lining is there. I don't think this is a good reason to be religious. What I do think is that it helps us to understand the utility of religion, how and why religions have worked for some people. I'm not saying it's a healthy solution, but it is a coping mechanism. It is a way for people to try to deal with being alive in a chaotic and often cruel world. And I think the best antidote to that is for us to try to work toward a less cruel world with less suffering, more equality, diversity, inclusion, joy, all of those types of things. I think the more we turn our planet into a heaven on earth, the less people are going to be prone to say, it may not be true, but it makes me happy. I think the real world then becomes more attractive. I know that sounds very pie in the sky, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
I'm a very quixotic person, so things like that actually resonate with me. And like the thing that I think about it, like if you're a Christian and you're looking at the world around you, like I would think the things that Christians tell me about heaven, the parts that aren't disgusting to me, sound pretty nice. And so wouldn't you want to live there now? Wouldn't you want to live in a world that is as close to heaven as possible? I love, if you're a Christian, ask yourself, like, how many hours a week do you need to work in order to afford a apartment in heaven? Is it none? Is that not a thing? What's the minimum wage in heaven? Is that not a concept because everyone's just cared for? Like what does wealth inequality or food inequality look like? What's the homelessness population? What do these things look like in heaven? Are those not concepts that make sense to you because the streets are gold and everybody's happy and blah, 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 whatever else? So why not join me in fighting like hell, for pun intended, I guess, to to make the world more like that. To say, okay, I don't think in my ideal world, in my literal version of heaven, nobody goes hungry. So I'm going to figure out a way to make sure that there's more than enough food to go around and that food is a right, that nobody has to struggle for food. Nobody has to worry that they didn't put in enough hours or that they had to pay their medical bills and so they don't afford food. I'm going to make sure that housing is a right. It doesn't have to be great housing, not everybody gets to have a mansion, but I'm going to make sure to just raise up the floor to make sure that the absolute most destitute person in my society has a safe place to live, has ample food, and has enough money to survive and get by. The poorest, most desperate person in my society has medicine, has food, has shelter, has clean water, and is able to pull themselves up by their figurative bootstraps in the same way that everybody else is. And if they become very successful, can then buy a mansion and a private and all these other things. Not everybody needs all the fancy things, but I'm going to make sure that there's no such thing as poverty anymore. I'm going to make sure that I live in a society where it is considered a profound, major injustice and a serious problem if somebody doesn't get a chance to go to college. That's the society, because that, I think, is pretty close to in line with what heaven would sound like, minus all the adulation and worship and shit. That sounds good to me.
A great meme out there. It says, I think we should outlaw billionaires. Instead, at $999,999,999, we give them a plaque that says, congratulations, you've won capitalism. Then we name a dog park after them and use their surplus to house, clothe, feed, and medically treat needing and hurting people. And I think that's a great I've come to the point in my life when I think, how many thousands of millions of dollars does one human being need? You're just a hoarder at that point, especially with so much suffering in the world. Mark out of Georgia calling back in. Your call got dropped earlier, so I'm going to move you to the top of the roster. Mark, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. You're on with Seth and Forrest. What's on your mind?
I like that previous call. I consider myself a part-time theist in a sense that when I'm in a situation of very high anxiety, I start believing in God and calling his name and asking for forgiveness for all the bad things I've done. But when I'm out of that state of high anxiety, then my default position is to see it as a completely illogical thing to believe in.
Right.
Mark, let me ask you a question. Is that how belief works? Like, if I am on the side of a cliff, let's say I'm standing on a precipice and there's a big drop off, does my belief in gravity and the fact that I might die if I fall, and that keeps me safe in that moment? So but I believe that gravity will cause me to fall down to my death. But if I'm not near the cliff, can I just shut off my belief in gravity? Can I just decide that I don't believe? How are you able to decide what you do and do not believe? Don't you just believe it?
I decide what I believe when I'm in a state of, when I'm not in a state of high anxiety. I understand reason and reality pretty well.
Is it a heightened emotional state? I think what I'm trying to figure out is, are you talking yourself into it? Are you acting out? Are you acting as if you believe? Because I'm not necessarily convinced that you can that you can hypnotize yourself into authentic, sincere belief in a pinch, unless you're just going through some kind of coping shift that's out of your control, and that would be more of a question for a psychologist. But do you really believe and really not believe in those moments?
Yes. Me being my previous experience, yes, I sincerely believed it because it was a very high anxiety situation. I told myself, even like minutes before that situation came up, I told myself that, this is illogical. You would never believe this. And all of a sudden I'm in a high anxiety situation and I believe it.
Well, let me ask you, and you don't have to give me too many details. What qualifies as a high anxiety situation that would flip the belief switch?
A high-anxiety situation for me is a situation that's out of your control, that with all of your learning and reasoning and abilities, the situation has reached a point that there's nothing much you can do on your own to change it.
I mean, can you give me a specific example or a scenario? You can make one up if you want. I'm not trying to, pry into your private life, but what's something that would cause that in your world?
Yeah, let me set up a scenario for you. Let's say I'm in a plane with a bunch of skydivers, and we all have parachutes on, and I'm the only one that doesn't know what a parachute is. So the door opens, and some guy pushes everyone out, including me. And here I am falling to my death, not knowing what a parachute is, and I'm in a situation to where I think that there is no way out of it. So in that situation, I'm going to be calling out God's name and asking for forgiveness and asking him to accept me into his kingdom. But then I look to my left, I see this guy, one of the skydivers who knew what a parachute was. He reaches to his chest and pulls the cord, and the parachute opens. And I'm going to do the same thing. Even though I'm in a state of high anxiety and think there's no way out, to me, there is no way out. And that forces me to the breaking point of accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. Until I see a guy pull the cord on his waist, then I just do the same because I have a parachute on.
So you're looking right at it, like something threatening is happening. Is that more like hedging your bets, like just in case, or is it a moment of desperation? I think what I'm trying to get to is, how do you then become a believer? I mean, I get it. Somebody's in the foxhole and they're terrified and they start crying out, and there are evolutionary reasons for people to do much of these things. But I'm trying to get past, what do you feel and what do you know, right? And so if you didn't believe in a God and you thought, well, none of the evidence adds up, I don't buy any of it. When you're in the plane or on the ground before the ride, and then while you're falling, you panic and you're like, oh, God, please save me. Please save me. God, please, I don't want to die. I understand that. But is your rational brain now literally saying there must be a God? Or are you just hedging your bets? Are you desperate?
I would say that, well, it's a high anxiety situation. So yeah, I would say I'm very desperate in that situation. It's for me, it's just something that happens. It's not, there's no point in me trying to fight not believing in God, because it's a situation that's rare and it's extreme. So me trying to fight it doesn't help me unless I know how to get out of it.
Maybe Forrest has a better phrasing of the question than I do. I don't know. You have thoughts, my friend?
I actually have a completely different, just way of thinking about this. And I don't know if I'd be useful at this moment. Because, my big thing is that, everything you're describing in this so far is a trauma response, is what it sounds like to me. And so,
Correct.
you've got, you were raised in this belief that this whole universe was specially designed with you in mind, and that there's this guy who really likes you, not enough to meaningfully impact your life, but maybe if you're dying, might show up for a second and make sure you don't die so bad. And so you lean on this, despite the fact that normally in your day-to-day life, clear heads prevail, and you're getting by just fine. So this just sounds like a response guided by and based in religious trauma from when you were younger. That makes sense. The issue that I have with it is which mind do you want to trust? Because I've struggled with anxiety before. And I kind of had to come to terms with the fact that when I am in the middle of a panic attack, I need to just assume that everything my brain tells me is a lie. And sure the fuck enough, when the panic attack ends, I feel great. And I can think clearly about the thing that was causing me to panic. And if I had done what my crazy brain told me to do, I would have been miserable and unhappy, and I would have made my life significantly worse, because that's what panic is leading you towards. And so, I think you need to just kind of identify this kind of Jekyll and Hyde situation you've got going on right now and decide which one of your minds do you want to trust. Do you want to trust the mind that tells you that there's some fucking magic guy out there that's going to protect you despite all logic and evidence? Or you want to trust the mind that guides you and makes you make healthy, sane, productive decisions 99% of the time in your life? I would trust that guy. and then take the time to think through it next time you feel like you're in that situation and you start praying and everything. Just wonder, like, okay, is this an effective use of my time right now? Because this doesn't help me 99% of the time. It's not actually helping me now. All it's doing is soothing me. And that's not actually getting me out of this situation. I just need to be focused on how to make this situation better. And I need to decide right now that no matter how scared I am and no matter how stressed I am going to think this through until I notice that I'm having a hard time thinking rationally. And then I'm going to find somebody who can help me, because I'm not going to allow this craziness to guide my life. That's what I would do. And I say that with a great amount of experience in doing exactly that.
Thoughts on that, Mark?
It's not, I don't think that's what I was directing. What I'm referring to are temporary situations that are high anxiety. My primary goal in using reasoning and logic is to figure out how to avoid those situations. And when I'm in those situations,
but when you're in that situation,
and
when you're in those situations, you should be using the same critical thinking and logic to try to ameliorate them and get out of them. But instead,
yes, that is correct.
You're allowing your lizard brain to take over and tell you that maybe there's a magic guy and that'll fix it for you. And that's wasting your time and stopping you from actually productively resolving the situation. And so I think you need to take that into consideration and find a way to, like, just remind yourself in that moment of that you are now using the crutch as a leg instead of leaning on it. You are actually replacing something where you were supplanting the crutch, and you need to stop using the crutch and decide, all right, this is not good enough for me. I'm going to do something better now. I'm going to think better now.
Okay, I don't see it as a crutch. If me as a reasonable person, I have to do the best of my knowledge when I'm not in that state to understand how to avoid that state. And when I'm in that state, if I don't have the tools to help me in that situation, then my response would be to do what it takes to lower my anxiety. So I can either lower my anxiety by knowing how to behave.
I feel like we're talking past each other.
I don't feel like
we're talking past each other.
I'm choosing to believe because things are stressful doesn't make sense to me.
I think to me it makes sense because it's something that naturally happens in my underlying psychology. If that makes sense.
Okay. Well, you're saying it's an involuntary response. I think Forrest is correct. What you're seeing is a kind of reaction to trauma or threat. And so your emotional brain, right, the adrenaline kicks in and you become a less reasonable, less rational creature in those moments. And you're just admitting it out loud. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I think we are confusing high anxiety versus unreasonable. Me having high anxiety may cloud my judgment, and I may need a mechanism to lower that anxiety so that I can think clearly. And some people use religion to do that. It's not that they can't make rational decisions, it's that the barrier to responding to a situation is anxiety. You have to lower it first. And then once you lower it, then you can move with thought and diligence.
So you think the utility of lying yourself through, right? Because you're essentially deceiving. You're being dishonest.
Right, yeah, it
to
sounds
get through
weird,
it,
but
to
correct.
achieve a more centered emotional state, lowering anxiety so that then afterward you can be rational. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
Forrest, I'm sorry, you had something?
I'm just saying you just did the thing that we're both telling you is you're calling in to say you're changing your thinking when you're stressful, and then you're saying, yes, I know I'm changing my thinking when I'm stressful, but the thing is I'm changing my thinking when I'm stressful. And like, I don't get where the hang up here is. Both what Seth and I are trying to get across is that, like, we understand you're doing that. You seem to understand that that's not a reasonable thing to do, so quit it. Like you're saying, like, well, I have this response to bring down my anxiety level so that I can then think clearly. There are other ways to do that you can practice, and that you can find ways to reaffirm better coping mechanisms than believing in a fairy tale or lying to yourself about something in order to get you through the stress to the point where you can then think clearly. And I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, I think clearly in order to avoid the stressful situation, but then when I'm in it, I can start thinking like, crazy shit. Like, no, just don't. When you're in the stressful situation, it is more important at that moment for you to be thinking as clearly and logically as possible. And so, like, in that situation, you need to try to abate the urge to then lean on, use this crutch is what I'm trying to say, to lean on fantastical, magical thinking in order to soothe yourself to the point where you can be rational again. It's not going to serve you any real purpose. It may calm you down, but it's not doing it in a healthy way.
Mark,
and it's certainly not going to help you.
Before I move on, what was the purpose of the call? Are you trying to convince us of the utility of having this coping response, this irrational response to get you out of an irrational state? I mean, what is the point of the call? Help us understand.
Yeah, the point is if people believe at least for me personally, I don't see myself as a believer, but when I'm in a high anxiety state, it's not that I want to leave in a guy. It just feels natural to me. It's just something I have to do to lower my anxiety. It's not like I'm planning it.
Okay. Well, I'm getting mixed signals here, and I'm going to go ahead and move on because I think we've sort of, I think we've gone about as far through this, but I'm hearing it happens automatically, and then I decide to do it. And I don't think those two are reconcilable. So I don't know what you're talking about. But at the end of the day, if it's true, it's true. And it's not, it's not. And Forrest is right. There are other ways that we can train ourselves to deal with high anxiety situations. There are all kinds of therapies that people need. And I really think the best way to approach our lives is to root our feet in the real world on solid ground. A happy fantasy, it might feel good in the short run, but I think the baggage that comes along with lying to ourselves is so much worse in the long term. I think, especially when we know that there are other scientifically developed and rooted on solid ground alternatives, there's no reason to embrace the happy fantasy in times of crisis. And that would be our encouragement for you. Is that fair, Mark?
I guess we'll have to agree to disagree.
We'll agree to disagree, but thanks for the call and be safe in Georgia, okay?
All right, thank you.
Still fundamentally,
see you later.
I still don't know what we disagreed about.
Did he? He says, I have to believe because I'm stressed out and I feel anxiety. But I'm like, well, that's not how belief works. And then I got the vibe that, well, no, I believe because then at that moment I find myself crying out instinctively because I have stress and I feel anxiety. Well, that's like an automated response, not a decision. And then he would go back and say, well, no, I have to believe because it helps me and I choose to do that. And I can't figure out how he approaches belief. So I figured after 15 minutes, maybe we had already,
it sounds an awful lot like it sounds like the kind of thinking that a pastor told him at one point or another. Well, like, when you're scared and your heart jumps out for God or reaches for God, that's what it is. That's the connection. That's the faith that you need to lean on. That's the truth of the religion. And I feel like those are the things where he's getting conflated between like, I just instinctively do this because I have a traumatic religious past versus I need to do this because it is what happened and that works. And it's like, I agree that it works. I also need you to understand that it's not safe or healthy for you. And so like, no one's arguing whether or not it's effective, but like meth's effective. If you need to keep up for a few days and need to get a lot of shit done, meth will do it for you. Don't do it though. It's a bad deal. You know what I mean? So like, find a better, more healthy coping mechanism, a better way to do this shit. Rather than leaning on this ideology that like, if I'm stressed right now and I just think ludicrous shit for 5 minutes, then I'll be calm enough to deal with my life. It's just not productive. It's not good enough. I don't know.
He was talking about falling out of the airplane. There's a film I just love. I can't defend it. It's just trash, but it's a Jason Statham movie called Crank. It is it's just a gory, shallow, violent 80s video game of a film. But there's a scene where he ends up like falling out of an airplane and he's got no chute. So he's falling obviously to his death. So he he picks up his cell phone and calls his wife. That's what I would do. I know it. I know you cannot do this because you're falling at 110 miles an hour and the wind is crazy. But he literally is like, honey, sorry, I'm not going to make it home. He's like literally on his back with the wind blowing through his clothes. And honey, I'm sorry, I can't make it home. That's what I was thinking about with this scenario. Don't forget to be watching The Line tomorrow. Skeptalk, 6 o'clock Central. Aaron Raw and Natalia Reagan are going to be the hosts for that one. And then on the 25th, Chewed Gum, Alyssa Lube and Eve are back for some action there. We've got The Hang Up, Matt Dillahunty, Wednesday night. He's joining, or J-Mike is joining Matt. They're joining each other. And then on the 27th, the Transatlantic Call-In Show. That's going to be with Arden and Luxander. Luxander? I think it's Luxander, isn't it? Help me out.
I believe it is.
Yeah, Luxander. Yep.
Thank you for that. Forgive me. I need little notations for syllables. That is my fault. Luxander. Going to be a great show with the Transatlantic Call-In Show coming up on the 27th. Can you believe it's almost the end of February and March is approaching? Please get me out of February. Done.
I'm trying to finish. I've got an episode of Reacteria that I'm filming immediately after this show and trying to have cranked out and edited and everything. And then I'm also doing a video for the American Heart Association about the evolutionary development of hearts and blood and stuff. And I'm doing that all by the end of this month. So I've got 5 days to crank out 2 videos. So I'll wait. I'm okay with just pacing out February just a little bit longer so I can get into March where I have an article to write for Skeptical Inquirer, and I've got the free flow, and I've got another video. I'm trying to make a long form video about the Galapagos, and I'm also doing a video about fungi with a buddy of mine who's a mycologist.
Hey, slug the new one that you just released.
Is what I'm telling you
about sexuality. Slug, because he just finished the edit and put it out there, and people need to know about it.
Yeah, so let me go and put the link in the chat here. So I 3 years ago made a video called Sex and Sensibility. It was my first long form video essay where I explained why sex and gender are different. Neither one is binary. However, it was my first video essay. And so it was kind of sloppy and had a lot of loud table thumping and one looping background track for the entire fucking thing. And so I remade it and I just released it yesterday. And for some reason, my chat here is very slow, but I promise it should be there. And there we go. But I just released that yesterday. It's an hour and 40 minutes long. But my favorite part about it is that I cover everything from like sex, what we cover the what biological sex is, the spectrum of sex across like a bunch of different species. We talk about gender, what gender is, how gender is necessarily non-binary by its very definition. We cover sexuality, we cover hormones. We cover why self-identification is a necessary, not just a preferred, but a necessary part of understanding gender. We talk a little bit about neuroscience. We talk a little bit about gender diversity and comparing different social constructs and stuff. Like it's a huge amount of information. And as many of you know, I am currently in my last semester of a master's in biomedical sciences with a concentration on human anatomy and vertebrate paleontology. And I decided as a part of this, I had to do research, 2 hours of just independent research as a part of this. And so I decided to make human sex and gender development the focus of that research. And the script for this video was derived from that report of work to put together those research credits. So if you look at the video and you go down into the description, I've got my review team, Dr. Kent Smith, Dr. Ann Weil, Dr. Pete White, Dr. Gordon Walker are all the general biology people. In the neuroscience section, we had Dr. Ben Ryan and Dr. Josh Weiner, psychologists, Dr. Roxanne Feelig, Dr. Justin Pruder, and Dr. Ina Kanevsky. The medicine section was Dr. Ben Hamilton and Dr. Todd Wolin. And the anthropology section, Dr. Emily R. Schumacher and Dr. Tina Lassisi. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 people who are way fucking smarter than me that all reviewed this script. And the first 2 people there, Dr. Ken Smith and Dr. Ann Weil, are actually on my committee for me to graduate this semester and oversaw my research and reviewed this script as well. So like, it's I make all the exact same points that I did in the last video. I just make a lot more of them, and they're a lot more clear and concise and well formed. And I don't mix up the word sex and gender sometimes to try to prove a point. I'm very concise with it. So check that out. If you have an hour and a half, a little bit more than an hour and a half, about 100 minutes to learn about a little bit of biological sex and gender. And I can't even tell you how much shit I cut out of that. Like, I left so much stuff out, yo. Like, there's so much more that could have been talked about, but it was long enough.
Full circle back to the whole cruelty thing, right? Because you want to talk about one of the most vilified demographics right now. I mean, what's the trans agenda? Yeah, and I'm like, you know what the trans agenda is? I want to live and be happy and not be hurt by other people. Like, I don't want to be cut out of society. I don't want to have my ass kicked. I don't want to be shot in an alley, right? I just want to live, for Pete's sake. And yet the Fox News culture is so vilified, this idea that, well, XXXY, and, man is a man and a woman is a woman. And part of me thought, the lack of curiosity about all of this, the lack of empathy, the lack of desire to listen. And even if you didn't get it, all right, I don't understand it. I'm overwhelmed by it. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I see the plumbing, but I don't understand the biology and blah, blah, blah. Where's the compassion for people who are living on the bubble, on the razor's edge every single day, who simply just want to get up in the morning and get through their day, live and be happy in safety? I mean, where's the empathy for that? What would Jesus do? Is always what I like to respond to that. And boy, you talk about a culture of bigotry that, and they've become a really easy target in conservative evangelical circles. And so I think that'll be a fascinating piece. I want to make sure and bookmark that sucker. Let's go to Alfred.
That's what gets me is we're doing all this work to try to, I'm so sorry. We're trying to stop trans athletes and stuff. Donald Trump has more sex assault allegations and more confirmed felony convictions than there are trans athletes in the entire freaking country. But where's our priorities, really? Ugh.
Alfred,
I'm sorry.
In Texas. I'm sorry about that, my friend. Welcome. Thanks for waiting. Are you there? Alfred, are you there?
I blew it for you, Alfred. I was rambling.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Yes.
Let's talk. What's on your mind?
So I was listening. Well, I was just listening, and I understand you guys are anti-death penalty, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
Before I get started, I wanted to issue a slight correction. This is slightly pertinent to the point I'm making. I know Forrest has said before, and I can't remember the date. He said that Jesus said, "Slay my enemies before me." And I'm just wondering if you'd like to amend that statement, or do I need to amend it for you?
So, what a fun tone to start with. So he said, bring anyone who does not want me as their king, bring them before me and slay them before me. He said that at the end of kind of a little parable that he was telling. And so, like, that wasn't him speaking. That was like the character of the king in the parable thing that he was talking about. However, the reason why I say that is because what?
So you knew that. I thought maybe you were just ignorant, but you knew better.
Hey, Alfred, let's
I'm
try
going
to
to
be
finish
civil here.
the sentence. Yeah,
we'll listen
I'm going to finish
you.
the sentence
hear
that I
your
was
point.
saying.
Yeah.
Right. The sentence that I was saying before you interrupted is he didn't specifically say that himself. The reason why I still say that is because of the point in that story, and also the continued point throughout the course of like the rest of his like character in the Bible is in line with that as well. And so, like, while that isn't, of course, his saying him that to his followers, anything like that, that is absolutely like his ideology and his mentality, if not quite so outspoken.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just get to my point, and it's.
No, you don't want to respond to the fact that, like, none of that. You just wanted to be a dick about that one thing. Well, no, Jesus was a Jewish man who was crucified. I mean, he was perceived as a threat to the Roman officials. And that means he wasn't violent.
The Romans, generally, when they crucified people, if you were violent, they'd crucify you with your followers. And if you were just creating problems, but you weren't a violent threat to the state, then they would crucify you alone, which is what happened.
Was
I think Kyle's got it
Jesus
right.
ever violent? Is I guess a better question. Was Jesus ever violent?
I guess you're getting at the temple cleansing.
I was asking you a yes or no question. That is a good example of him being violent, sure.
No.
By
So
the way,
him-
that Jesus would have made splinters of Mar-a-Lago. I just want to put that on the
Right.
record.
No, for sure.
Alfred, Matthew
So-
chapter 10, do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Jesus Christ said those words in the New Testament. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so it's not really clear. I don't think he's endorsing violence there. Just a statement about my words and my message will result in violence. And the
So
followers of Jesus were
just to be
persecuted.
clear,
We know that.
But if he brought the
just
sword,
to be very clear, if I told you right now, Alfred, that I am not here to bring peace, I am here with a sword, would you assume that I was actually advocating for peaceful nonviolence and that I will eventually be persecuted and the people who believe me, and that's what I mean? Or would you think by me saying I am not here peacefully, I am here with a sword, means that I am here to fuck some shit up?
You added not peacefully, so I mean, I would probably.
He said,
that
I
in
come
that
not to
situation.
bring peace, but a sword. That is what that means. I paraphrased, but I did not misinterpret.
An interesting paraphrase.
well, I mean,
if
what
I may-
would
To
be,
say exactly
what
what
would
it
be-
is.
What would be not
No.
peace? If he didn't come to bring peace, what do you think he came to bring? I'm curious.
He came to bring the kingdom of God.
Okay, well, he
And
brings
he
it, but he
believed it
brings
was
it not
something
in an
here on earth.
attitude of peace. So what would the attitude be?
I think there was a recognition that there would be violence in response to it.
So
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't get past this. You're telling us that if someone says, I am not here to bring peace, I am here to bring a weapon, you see that as saying, I am actually quite peaceful, but somebody might be mean to me someday. That's what we're to interpret this?
Well, there's more context that allows me to really have some grounding for saying, no, that's not what it means. I mean,
So
when
it
Peter pulls out
doesn't
a
say
sword,
what
he's
it
like,
says, is kind of what I'm hearing, Forrest. Like it says it, but it doesn't say what it says. So he didn't bring a
well,
sword.
later in the Gospel of Matthew, one of his followers takes out a sword, strikes someone, and Jesus is like, dude, what is this? It's like a
Was that before
reference
or
back-
after he? Was that before or after he set a tree on fire
After.
for not having fruit for him?
He didn't set it on fire.
I don't think he set it aflame, but did he?
Didn't he? I thought he
Yeah, I don't
smote
think
it.
he set it aflame. But I'm not sure how that's a refutation. We'll get to your real point in a second. But
Sure.
I'm glad we camped out for a second. So if Jesus does something benevolent down here a few chapters, how does that in any way take the sword out of his hand in Matthew chapter 10? How does that in any way change the fact that he said, I did not come to bring peace, and I have come to turn. He didn't say it was going to happen as some sort of an ancillary side effect because I'm so loving, but shit's going to go down anyway as a side effect. He said, I have come to turn a man against his father, etc. I've come to turn families against each other because this is a popularity contest in which I must win, even against your own parents, your own children, your siblings, your spouse, anyone that you love or care about on this earth. How is that peace? How is that love?
I'll dance to your little polonaise. I don't think he's not endorsing violence.
It's awesome. No. What's a polonaise? Hang on. No, I'm
It's a
Googling.
Polish
No, keep
dance.
talking, Alfred. I'm good.
We just gotta know.
Polonaise.
No,
No, I'm looking
it's
that
just-
up.
I have my own interpretation of what Jesus meant when he said, I have come to bring the sword. Okay?
Yeah, no, totally. And so
dance.
do the
And
other
I didn't make it up. I found this in
39,000
another book.
versions of Christianity.
Okay, well, we've danced the polonaise. So let's get to your.
I learned what a
main
polonaise is today.
I looked it up. It is a Polish dance and music form that is stately and ceremonial. So apparently there is much pomp to the polonaise. Okay. So what's the main point that you wanted to call and make today? I'm curious.
Sure. So I was calling in to say that in my world of theology, God hates war and he loves peace. And I know you guys,
come on,
in many of your recent shows, you have Trump in the title. And I know you guys are left wing, which is fine. And I know you
a little bit
aren't really fans of Christianity. And I figured I'd call in to talk about being a Christian and why I voted for Trump. And I know he's not perfect.
So hold on there just really quickly, Alfred. Two different things. Number one, that's not what you put in the call screen. So we can get there if you want, but we're going to talk about what you actually told the call screener you wanted to talk about first. And the second thing, you're telling us that this God hates war and is a God of peace. We are talking about the same God who told, Saul to go wipe, I believe it was the Amalekites,
yes,
and kill every man, woman, child, infant, baby, their horses, their oxen, their asses. And when Saul didn't kill enough people, God took him away removed his authority as king, and instead anointed David so that David could commit the wholesale slaughter and genocide that God wanted him to, and plagued Saul with demons for the rest of his life to drive him insane. And then Saul died in 4 different ways in the Bible. We're talking about that same God?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's part of the Old Testament.
I guess, you know what, though? That makes perfect sense. Why you can say, when Jesus says, I do not bring peace, I bring a sword, and you can say that's peace, it makes sense that you would also say, the God who says, I will destroy someone's life if they don't murder enough babies for me. And you're like, yeah, that's the God that hates war and loves peace. And that's why I voted for Trump. It's actually very consistent, and I appreciate the consistency, Alfred.
No, I don't think you understand me. I think that there are barbaric passages in the Old Testament like that. The Bible does. The Old Testament has passages that, because I'm a Christian, I know that's not right, okay? And that was the understanding of God back then, and I'm not on board with it. And,
so was God wrong?
Why do you think
God wrong back then?
In the 21st century wouldn't have come to correct the record and to say, that was bad news back then?
Well, we have Jesus.
No, but Jesus said in the New Testament that it came to affirm the law, right? So he didn't negate the Old Testament. And if Jesus and Yahweh and the Holy Spirit are one, right? The triune God, the Holy Trinity, 3 in 1, they are all eternal, they are all the same. Then Jesus is Yahweh when Yahweh was having 500,000 people killed, executed at a time by his Israelite armies. And so what I want to know is, if a God who knows everything and is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and who is also Jesus Christ of the New Testament, he does something that causes you discomfort. Why would that God have done it in the first place? And why wouldn't he show up today to explain why the hell it was wrong, or what he should have done different, or whatever? What's going on?
So I don't have an answer to that question. What I will say is that Jesus does abolish the law, in that he reinterprets it. So he says that the law
he was lying then. Got it.
Sure. Okay. So he says that the law and the prophets, a summary of them is treat people how you want to be treated. And later he says, love your neighbor as yourself. And in an Old Testament context, yes, that meant fellow Israelite. And Jesus comes and he's asked, and who is my neighbor? And he says, I'll tell you. And he tells the parable of the Good Samaritan. And he extends the definition of neighbor to include enemy, Samaritan. So basically,
so then
everybody is.
So to be clear, right. So then you think that when Jesus said, not a jot or tittle of the law shall change until the end of the age and all things come to pass. And when Jesus says, I come not to change the law, but to fulfill it, and I am the same as Heavenly Father that is in me, and all these things, you think he was just bullshitting with those? He was lying on those?
No, I don't know what he meant there. I think maybe he might.
So when God says and does things, the same God, which, as Seth pointed out, the Bible says God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. God never changes. God is consistent all the way through. When, despite the many times that he changes his mind in the Bible, but when this God, who is the same forever, and when Jesus, who says the law is the same forever, when that guy does things you don't like, that you find distasteful, well, it was different. You don't really understand what was going on there. It was just different. But when he says things you do like, then it's very easy to interpret and very clear.
No, not really. I mean, I told you that in the book of, I think it was Samuel you were referencing. Like, I'm here to tell you that was wrong. There's no ambiguity there.
Right.
I'm telling you that when Jesus speaks and says, sorry.
So, Alfred, then you think God did something wrong. Yes?
Not necessarily. I think the Bible, the Old Testament in particular, reflects the ancient Israelites' understanding
Square
of
the
God.
circle for me. Square the circle for me. God said, slaughter these people, including all of their children and animals, salt the earth so nothing grows again, a complete and total genocide. God commands that. You say that was a wrong thing to do, but God wasn't wrong for doing it.
Because I'm Christian.
How does that make sense?
I didn't say God was wrong for doing that.
That's exactly what I literally just said you didn't say. So I'm going to say what I just said again. Try to listen to what I'm saying rather than just thinking about the next thing you want to say this time. You say that in the Old Testament, God commands complete genocide, and you say that was wrong, but you do not say that God was wrong for doing it. How does that work? Square that circle for me.
Sure. So I would say in the text, what was commanded there is wrong. I don't think that what is narrated in that text actually happened, that God actually told somebody to commit genocide. I don't think that happened. That's how
so you think the Bible is wrong?
Hang on. Why don't you think that happened if it's written in the text of Scripture?
It's a good question. As you know, the Hebrews, they were very symbolic in their language, and they were. I mean, do you deny that?
Got it.
All right. So
I'm just saying I'm exaggerating this. Of course, because it's funny to me that once again you have a part of the Bible that you don't like. So rather than saying the Bible is fallible, rather than saying God is fallible, it's no, it's these silly Hebrews. They wrote something down in my perfect infallible book that isn't quite right, but it's just silly. It's just the next excuse for the fact that the Bible, the God of the Bible, is evil, and we point that out. And it's like, no. You see, the people who wrote the Bible fucked it up, but that's neither here nor there. That's all.
You see the challenge, don't you, Alfred? When Jesus replaces the severed ear of the wounded man, that happened because it's good. But whenever the Israelite armies go in and slaughter babies and shove their swords into, children and animals and, the innocent, and the blood spills into the streets, well, that's, it might be metaphor. It was oral tradition. Some stuff got messed up, or if it did happen, it wasn't really God's eye. I mean, do you see the challenge that Forrest and I are hearing in your responses?
I totally see it. And the Bible is a vastly contradictory book. The Old Testament is a lower canon for me. The New Testament is the New Testament. It's more authoritative for us Christians.
I'll tell you a secret.
The Old Testament is produced.
New Testament's just as fucked up in different ways. It certainly is. But the New Testament is extremely problematic. So I'm not sure that
the way it goes after the Jews is really problematic, and I'm somewhat confounded. Like, that is maybe the most important criticism, maybe the most stock criticism of the New Testament, how it portrays Jews and how that has resulted in Christians murdering Jews. And you guys rarely, if ever, talk about it. And I'm just, why don't you guys do that?
Well, it's a strong
nice red herring. We have talked about it before. I certainly have. Alfred, do you believe in a literal hell?
You would need to define hell.
Depart from me, you who are cursed, into a lake of everlasting fire and damnation.
I think you just merged two passages, Matthew and Revelation.
It doesn't
Lake
matter.
of
That's
fire.
what's written in the damn book.
Did I? Let me
The
pull it up. No.
Lake
If
of,
I
even if he
I could
did,
be
it doesn't change anything.
right.
I can merge a couple. The Lake of Fire is one. The place of wailing and gnashing of teeth is another one. Like, I'm talking about a place where your soul goes to be tortured for all eternity, conscious torture in figurative or literal fire. That's what
I got it right. Matthew 25, and he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. I did okay.
There you go.
Okay. So, yeah, you added the lake part, but yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. The eternal fire
all
that
wrong,
is not
then.
a lake.
We're all wrong, and we don't know
really
anything because he added the lake.
It's like a
more of a
swirling
river.
eddy, really. And there's it's not a
just
lake.
a very, very big one.
Okay.
It's a very big one.
Large swirling eddy. Alfred, I'm going to move on in just a second unless you have anything else for us. I got a full switchboard. You think God is
I'm so curious. I'm so curious to know, like, do you believe in a literal hell the way it was described in the Bible, the way that we just referenced? No. Okay, so once again, so my last question for you, Alfred, how do you determine which parts are symbolic language and the Hebrews were just silly little guys that just embellish the word of God, and which parts of the Bible are actually literally true?
I don't think we can tell for sure. We have varying levels of confidence. There are some
and
things
that
we
is
can
exactly
archaeologically.
That is exactly my point, Alfred, is that there are over 40,000 different flavors of Christianity. You have one, which is your preferred reading, your preferred interpretation of your preferred version of your preferred translation of the Bible, where you just decide which pieces are right and which pieces are wrong. And I guarantee the Christian next door to you has an entirely different interpretation and believes just as fervently, and you have exactly the same reason to believe as they do, which is none.
Mm-hmm. Happy to hear it.
Thanks for calling, Alfred.
Glad we're all on the same page. I completely understand why you voted for Trump. Like, you didn't have to explain it. That summarized it right there.
Depart into a swirling eddy of fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. I mean, all right, violence in the Bible. Just come on, talk to me, Forrest. I mean, someone says God is good and he hates violence, and you say what?
I say you haven't read your fucking book. Or if you have, you've done what Alfred did, and you just interpreted it in a way that is preferable to you in order to hold on to this ridiculous belief that there's some guy who is simultaneously all good and all loving and all powerful, and also just doesn't fucking want to fix any of the major glaring problems in our world, or deal with the logical contradictions of his morality, or actually be a good guy in any capacity. Because anytime he does anything evil, whether in the Bible or in reality, you explain it away with the same nonsense. And like I said at the end of the call there, I 100% understand why Alfred voted for Trump. He did not have to explain it to me, because I can see the thought process here. Oh, he said something horribly racist and stupid. Oh, well, he's not really going to do it. That's not really what he meant. Well, somebody else said something worse. Well, you misinterpreted it, whatever. Oh, he did the horribly racist, stupid thing? Well, at the end of the day, who are we to judge? We don't really know what's going on up there. It wasn't really, it's a lower canon of Trump is what it is. The higher canon of Trump is the guy that I like and I appreciate. It's just lazy thinking in order to squish reality into a silly little box that makes you comfortable and makes you feel big. And that's the kind of attitude that we got out of Alfred the entire time as well. This giggling arrogance of like, oh, do I need to correct this for you? Like, no, you can actually just have a decent conversation like a human being if you'd like to try. But at the end of the day, all you're going to do is just try to hand wave away any part of the Bible or any part of your religion where your God does something that you find unsavory, so that you can supplant in your own evidenceless belief as if it were fucking canon. And I just don't have time for that kind of self-importance.
It's like when I narrated the audiobook for Dr. Joshua Bowen. He is an Assyriologist, and he has a book called Did the Old Testament Endorse Slavery? And it's a it was a big project, and of course I'm having to navigate all of these ancient Sumerian words. Dr. Josh, how do I pronounce this ancient king or this old city or whatever? But he gets into, because when we talk about Old Testament slavery, and people they do immediately what Alfred just did. Well, who really knows? Was it indentured servitude? It was a different time. God had to condescend to the kind of people who couldn't really understand what, liberty and freedom and autonomy and safety and equality would be. So he had to kind of work within this system. And to watch people do this tap dance just blows my mind. And the idea that, well, because it was a few thousand years ago, it was less wrong, to me, it just does not wash. I've got to call out of Sweden. Anders, welcome to the show, my friend.
Jumping into the next one. I was going to tell you things. Never mind. No,
go ahead. I mean,
I was just going to say that there's this like famous, I think he was a radio show host, I'm not sure, out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, who once said, Christianity makes me talk like an idiot. And that's what I was thinking when I was listening to Alfred's call. But no, we'll just move on to the next one, and I won't say anything nice about you. Never mind. Anders from Sweden. Hello.
And you will need you might need to actually rein me back. I do tend to go boom, boom, boom through stuff. So if I'm booming too quickly, then yes, that's fine.
He is a boomer.
Anders out of Sweden. Are you on the line? Can you hear us? Are you there? Hello.
As I understand it, I need to watch Forrest's video for this.
Hello.
What's your question? Maybe we can give you a primer here. Go for it.
Yeah. What is the biological definition of sex? And
what is the biological definition of sex?
Yeah. That's what I heard.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah,
so I'm going to give you a couple of answers here, because much like with the word adaptation, it's a word that has different usages that mean different things. But long story short, sex is a system of genome blending in order to produce genetically distinct offspring.
No.
And so
I mean
the term
male, female.
Right. I'm getting there. And so that's like the functionality of sex. And so we use this to say this is the function of the process. It is also the way that we then classify sexually reproducing species, or individuals of a sexually reproducing species, based on their sexual phenotype, which can be broken down into several different like layers. And so if you ask just kind of the general population, like the introductory textbook level, then we're going to say we're splitting this population into reproducing parts, into mating types. Male and female is a great one that pretty much everybody knows that we hear about. It's not the full breadth of it, but it's good enough to get the concept. That's like the classifications. But then if you get into it a little bit more deeply, you'll see that it is actually a suite of characteristics, a complex interplay of several different things. It's a multivariate thing. So you have like chromosomal sex, genetic sex, hormonal sex, gonadal sex, anatomical sex, phenotypic sex, like all these individual layers that don't necessarily imply one or the other, and none of them mean the same thing as gender. So short answer of that tirade is it is the classification system by which we attempt to classify individuals of sexually reproducing species.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm
sorry that I had to give you such a long thing. It's just it's politically salient perfect right now, so I want to be thorough.
No, it's perfect because I'm completely on board with there being several definitions, or the definition being complicated. Biology is messy. Well,
it is.
Thank you.
So
I just want to add that Jesus did say in Luke that his followers should bring swords with them.
There you go. Tell that to Alfred.
Thanks for being thanks for calling. And honestly, take some time. Let's spend an hour and 40 minutes with Forrest watching his video, which he just released, and it's link it again in the chat, somebody, and we'll make it available to everybody. Okay, Anders?
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Be
you.
safe.
Thank you so much,
See
Anders.
you later.
I appreciate your question.
Sweden. I was thinking of maybe asking for asylum. Hey, Anders, do you have a couch that we can sleep on? Natalie and I have actually had this conversation. We've actually had this conversation. Like, what happens if things are so out of control and so untenable? We've talked about where will we go outside of these borders? If the insanity of humanity, if we continue to self-immolate, who would have us? And we have been Googling and we have been looking at, all right, passports and visa and digital nomad visa and tourist visa. And how long does that last? And what part of the world would be? And what's the cost of living? And I probably do what I do. But what about Natalie? Because she works in medical. We've had all of these very conversations I didn't think I couldn't have imagined having. Even just a few months ago, I read that people Googling, how do I move out of the United States? That number of Google searches is up by like 580% this month.
Yep. Just like how the day after the election, what is a tariff was through the roof as well, because and also how to change my vote immediately after the election when Trump was announced as the winner. How do I change my vote was like one of the top Google search, like just huge, because people are like, oh shit, I didn't actually expect it to happen. And like, just, man, it fucking sucks. And people like to pretend. I agree with you. I understand. Like, it is something to think about, and that's scary. But I just want to make sure, just like with the airplane conversation, as much as I can admit that I'm, worried, I don't want to so worry. You know what I mean? Like, seeking asylum, moving to another place, and seeking asylum, it's not an easy thing, nor is it a comfortable thing. And like, people shouldn't expect it to be like a fun little vacation. Like, it should be your absolute last resort idea. Just think about.
I wonder who. I need to go somewhere where people can navigate my Oklahoma accent. I mean, because I can get, when I'm tired, it really comes out, and I start to talk more like an Oklahoman. It just comes out of my mouth. There was something else. It'll come back to me probably the second the show ends. Let's talk to. I'm going to talk to
You're
Jeff.
Spoiled for choice.
Jeff at 918, because Jeff's a theist. He dialed in last week, but we'll give this a short shot. Welcome. Are you there?
Hey, Seth. It's really good to talk to you. And Forrest, it's good to talk to you as well.
What can we do for you?
I'm calling in. I usually call in, I try to call in lately under my internet name, which is Watcher215. I'm calling as a representative, I guess, from the kingdom of heaven to bear witness to the truth of God and the earth unto you guys.
Okay.
By way of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia. All right. Go Birds.
Lo, I looked to the east, and there was Watcher.
Yeah.
Hey.
I have a million questions already. Like, that's a hell of a way to start.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
I guess the biggest thing. Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is, like, are you aware? Like, do you really understand that Seth and I don't believe this God is real? First of all.
Oh yeah, that you made that abundantly clear.
Perfect. And do you understand? And do you understand that neither Seth nor I finds this God? I shouldn't speak for you, Seth, but like, so tell me if I'm saying anything that's untoward here. But like, do you understand that we do not find this God pleasant or desirable either? We are against the idea of this God.
Yeah, when you say this God, I think what you have is a caricature of the true God. I don't think you have the
That's not what I asked.
Real God.
That's not what I asked you. But that's not what I asked you.
Okay, forgive me. Go ahead. Tell me again what you're asking. I missed you.
What I asked you was, do you understand that Seth and I, whether you think we have a good idea of this God or not, Seth and I, we understand this God enough that we don't like it. We do not want anything to do with this God, real or not.
Yeah, I've heard that loud and clear. I just think that your perception of God is wrong.
But that's fine. So here's the thing. what makes you, when somebody says very clearly, like, I think this is just completely repulsive and completely evil. I don't want anything to do with this. I don't care if it's true or not. I'll be the first one to admit that it's true, but I just don't want anything to do with it in any way. What then compels you to say, I'm going to make sure these people hear more about this?
Well, if you were wrong about your perception and you're hating on something that's wrong, or you're perceiving something that's wrong about the character you're talking about, and I feel like you don't realize it, that's why I would approach you and maybe try to clear up your understanding about this person that you're hating so bad.
What if I sincerely and politely told you that, like, I am not interested at all? I've heard enough about this God. I've been doing these shows for a couple of years now. I've read the Bible. I grew up in Oklahoma. I'm surrounded by churches at all times. I'm surrounded by Christians of all flavors. I have heard everything there is to hear about this God, and I am not interested. Please keep your God to yourself. What would you feel about me saying this?
I have to respect you, Forrest, and I do respect you.
So you would you then honor my wishes and leave us alone with this God?
Well, I would have to be true to my own convictions. That doesn't mean one of my convictions is respect for you. So if me and you were talking like we're talking right now, and you tell me, look, I don't want to hear anything else you have to say about God. Mm-hmm. I would take you where you are, and I would respect you, and I wouldn't further engage you. I think that would just anger you, and I wouldn't, press the matter. At the same time, like I said, I'm gonna be true to my own convictions, and like I said, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It just sounds, those two statements, I'm having a hard time understanding what you're meaning. It sounds like you're saying that you would respect my wishes and not push your religion on me, but you would be forced to. And I'm trying to understand, just a simple yes or no, as much as you can. Would you continue trying to teach me about God?
Only to the extent that and I'm sorry, it's not a yes or no. It would be no if you tell me you don't want to hear from me anymore. It would be yes if you are open to continue to engage me. So it really depends on how you are. If you tell me you don't want to talk to me about,
let me simplify
God
it even
anymore,
further.
Okay.
Yeah, let me simplify it even further then. What if I told you, I'm happy to talk to you, I'm happy to be your friend, I don't wish you any ill will, but I find this idea of God so repugnant and so offensive, I do not want to hear about it anymore ever from you. Are you telling me that, like, talking about God is contingent, or like our having any conversation is contingent upon talking about God? Like, is the only way we can speak if you're going to talk about God?
No, absolutely not. I would be
right.
I'd invite you to coffee.
So then I ask again.
We could talk about the game if you want, and
sure.
Talk about our
so then ask again.
And,
if I asked you to keep this God away from me in every way, shape, or form, would you honor that and respect me and not do that, or would you need to tell me about this God, show some symbol of this God to me, whatever? Like, would you be willing and able to respect my wishes and say, all right, we are never going to talk about God again, no matter what?
Yeah, I wouldn't. The God that you're describing, I wouldn't. That wouldn't be the God that I would be bringing to you.
Any God, any God at all.
Any God.
Whether it's what I'm describing, what you're describing, or anything. Just, if I told you the God of the Bible, the God of Christianity, anything associated with it at all, what you believe in, what I believe doesn't matter. Do not talk to me about Jesus. Do not talk to me about God. Do not talk to me about Yahweh. Do not talk to me about the Bible. Do not talk to me about angels. None of it. Zero. Would you be able to respect that?
I think so. It would make me sad, but I would have to respect your wishes if that's what you want.
Okay, now let me take it one more step further. What if I asked you to please leave me out of your prayers as well? I don't want you to pray for me, because if this God is real, I don't want anything to do with it. And if this God is real, you putting my name in its head just isn't for me. I want you to not pray for me too. Would you respect that as well?
That would kind of conflict with my conviction to not pray for you. That would conflict with my own personal conviction. So, and I think I could still respect you without, you don't even have to know that I'm praying for you. I mean, that's not necessary. I go in my own prayer closet. You wouldn't know anything about it. I think I could still give you your respect and still honor my conviction at the same time.
I'm trying to understand the difference. If you think this God is real and you think that praying to him means something and it does something and it matters, it's actually causing this God to do a thing with me in mind. So I'm asking you to keep this God away from me entirely, to not speak to me about it, to not bring it up to me. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to think about it. I'm telling you to keep this God to yourself 100%. And yet you're going to send him after me. How does that not also violate my consent and continue to disrespect my wishes?
Well, I'm sending love after you.
That doesn't matter.
Think about that.
Now let me jump in.
I'm
going to jump in.
Yeah, please.
If I may.
Go ahead and jump in.
I don't give a shit whether or not Jeff prays for me privately. I don't consider that a violation of me. I mean, if he wants to go off in his prayer closet and petition his Jesus, I mean, people like, I'm going to pray for you. I'm like, knock yourself out. That's no skin off my teeth. They're not doing it in my living room. They're not sticking it in my face. I don't have to see it, smell it, taste it, touch it. I don't have to do any of that stuff. So if someone else wants to go on their own and say, dear Jesus, please reveal yourself to Seth, I don't have a problem with that. Are you hearing, Forrest, that you consider that to be a type of violation of your autonomy?
I'm just exploring an idea here with Jeff. Is that like according to Jeff, in Jeff's belief system, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jeff, according to you, this God is a real dude, and you praying has a measurable real effect. And I am telling you that if this God is real, I do not want anything to do with it, period. I don't care what you think about it. I don't care what you think I think about it. I don't want it, and that's the end of it. And you're willing to respect that in terms of conversation. You're willing to maintain a relationship with me, and we can talk, but we don't talk about God. And I appreciate that sincerely. I really do. It took us a while to get there, but I really do appreciate it. Now I'm asking, why don't you see that the same way? If you believe you are sending this God out to me and sending this God to talk to me, why do you not see that as the same violation as you coming to talk to me about this God?
I see.
Okay, I don't think that God himself would, just like he's advising me to respect you and your wishes. I think he would do the same. And if you have the same, if you're confronting him and perceiving him as this wicked, evil, disgusting thing that you don't want to talk to, I think he will honor your wishes, actually. And sadly, this is the dilemma that we're in, because his whole mission is a mission of reconciliation with each one of us.
Yeah, no.
We're estranged from
Look,
it.
you're not going to preach to us, Jeff. You are probably talking to two people who know this religion better than many of the people who hold to it. Dr. Chrissy Stroop is a friend of mine who has a great line. Proselytization is objectification. All right. It is a type of colonization. What you were saying is, well, you're living wrong and you are damaged goods. You're the prodigal. You need to be brought home. You need to be fixed. And then if we say, no, don't, stop, boundary drawn, you go back to your closet, you're still asking your God to go into our autonomous space and continue to rap us on the head with a hammer. And we're saying, look, no, we've had these conversations. We've made our decision. We're done. We reject it.
And even what you just said, Jeff, is you said that God would respect me more than you would. You're saying that you would be forced to pray, but you believe that if God knew my intentions and my feelings about it, that it would not come and preach to me or reveal itself to me or anything like that. So you are then doing something that you yourself recognize is worthless because it's important to you to do it against my will. So I'm trying to wrap my head around that. If you don't think that your God is going to come to me anyway because I reject him, then why are you going against my consent and sending him after me in the first place?
I think my prayer would probably be for you to humble yourself and actually invite God to have dialogue with him. That would be my prayer, really. Why does that suck?
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah,
Knock yourself out.
Yeah, and that's still, I'm still trying to explore this concept. Like, I have specifically asked you not to bring this God around me. This is against my consent. If you talk to me about God, it is against my consent, right? And you agree with that, and you acknowledge that, and you say, I won't do it. But then you are going to pray to this God to humble me and reveal himself to me and change my heart and my mind.
I'm praying for you to humble yourself. I'm not praying for God to do it.
Do you believe, Jeff, do you believe your prayers have, do you believe that your prayers have any effect on me as a person? Do you believe that your prayers will cause me to do anything?
Well, I think, yeah, because God controls all circumstances, like everything that you experience in life, your circumstances can be.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So at the end of the day, you're not praying for me to humble myself. That's a cop-out.
I am.
You're praying for God.
That's true.
You are
Why
praying
is that
for
a cop-out?
God.
Why is that
because
why are you saying
Jeff,
that's a cop-out?
I'm finishing my sentence. You're going to have to listen to it. It's a cop-out because you are praying for God to change the circumstances because he controls all things and create a circumstance which causes me to humble myself. That is God humbling me. If I create the circumstances in which someone drowns, I've drowned them. So you are telling God to create a difference in my life, to influence my life so that I will eventually agree with you and come to him and all the after I have told you I don't want that. So you're willing to respect me and acknowledge my consent and say, all right, you do not consent to a conversation about God, but you are not willing to respect my consent when you pray and say, I am going to make sure that I'm going to do everything I can that this God influences your life in a way that you don't want so that you change your mind and do what I want you to do. How are you okay with that? When you're okay, when you're not okay, when you acknowledge that you're not going to violate my consent and talk to me about God?
It's because humility is a good thing, my friend.
See, and this is exactly what I'm getting to. A minute ago, when I asked you why you would send God after me, your snap response was, I'm sending love after you. And now you're saying you need to be humbled. You need to be humiliated. You need this humility. So you can do it. All of what you are saying is predatory. And as Seth pointed out, it is the same kind of colonizer.
Why is humility predatory?
No one's saying that it is. No one's saying that humility is predatory. We're saying your belief system and practices are predatory. You say you have a God. I am finishing a sentence. You say that you have a God that is so star-spangled wonderful that we need to be a part of it. And Seth and I are saying, no, thank you. And instead of saying, fuck, that sucks, I hope you see it my way someday, I'll leave you alone. You are instead trying, in whatever way you believe is real, trying to change our lives, trying to influence our days, our day-to-day circumstances, trying to change our minds and our hearts, trying to take away our fundamental autonomy so that we will be compelled to agree with you and to worship this monster that we want nothing to do with. You are exhibiting, as much as you think what you are saying is benign, and I understand you do, as much as you think what you are doing is good and kind and gentle, what you are exhibiting is predatory, forceful behavior. that you are going to force us to change our minds by praying that God change our lives so that we are humbled, so that we eventually come to agree with you. I think that if you heard us praying to Satan to influence your life in such a way that it caused you to reject God, you'd think that was pretty fucked up for us to do. And yet you think that you're doing something right because you believe the right thing, and that is wrong.
I think, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Forrest, I'm really glad. I'm honestly really glad to talk to both of you guys. I really like both of you guys. I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and worked in Tulsa for about 10 years. So I was
Still got
really
the area
familiar
code
with
too.
Seth. And
It's a cool area code.
yeah. I kept my number. So like I said, I'm a fan. But what I wanted to say,
quickly,
Forrest, I think that your sight is off. Like you see me and my God as a monster, and we're actually friends of yours. We're not monsters. We're coming to you.
That has no bearing on the conversation. That has no bearing on the conversation. I know what you're saying. That's why I didn't engage with you in the normal way that I would usually engage with a theist, is because I know that that's not the point. Seth, what are you saying?
I'm just saying, I think he's preaching. I think this is a riff on, well, if you only knew Jesus the way I knew Jesus, and I'll pray for you, hashtag I'll pray for you. Jeff, thanks for calling, but there's nothing new under the sun.
I think your vision is off, is all.
The truth is,
Jeff,
if God cared enough, he wouldn't need you to intercede. There would not be a reality where on a planet of 8 billion people, 2/3 of the residents of Earth would worship another God or none at all. There would be no ambiguity at all. The God who was not the author of confusion would have already settled it. He would have settled it scientifically, historically, and morally. He would not need you to go to your inner room to intercede for us, to help bring us to the fold, to make us humble, to open us up to what the truth of Jesus is. That's on Jesus. And the truth of it is that that's an assumption that Forrest and I haven't already taken this journey on our own. You think we didn't go through deconstruction? You think we didn't actually pray, God, please reveal? I'm not sure what's going on. Do you think we didn't go to Genesis 1:1 and read the whole fucking Bible to try to see what it says and where it came from and who wrote it and what were the context and what the issues are? Do you think we don't understand the religion that we have rejected and the God that it posits? Because we absolutely have. We do not need you. And trust me, if God exists, God does not need you either. And I'm going to move to the next call. Jeff, have a wonderful week and take care of yourself. Dell in Ohio, thank you so much for being on the switchboard for so very long, almost 2 hours. Are you there?
I am. Hi, nice to talk to you.
Welcome to the show. You're on with Seth and Forrest. Let's talk. What's on your mind?
Absolutely. So first off, obligatorily, I just have to say I'm so excited to talk to you guys. I have so much respect for the work you do, Forrest. I'm a biologist and an aspiring ecologist, and your work as both a professional and an activist is so awesome and so exciting. And I aspire to be as intelligent and as much of like an influential, I want to connect with the public in the same way that you do eventually. So I really respect that. And Seth,
that means a lot to me. Please don't aspire to be like me. You can be so much better, very easily. I'm don't be as shitty as me.
Oh, come on. Give yourself more credit.
Take the compliment.
I will not.
Come on. You inspire and educate a lot of people, Forrest. Go ahead, Del. What's on your mind?
Yeah, and Seth as well, you are a fantastic speaker, and I also hope to be able to speak as well about biology as you do about religion, but I'll get to it.
Yes, Seth,
you're very kind. Thank
you. Of course. So I have a family member who grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian household, and they are, I don't think that they're aware of it, but they seem to still hold some regressive ideas socially. But like, they seem to think that they're a little bit more on the progressive side of things. Like, they self-identify themselves as like a liberal, but sometimes it's more in concept and less in practice. And when I see the way that they talk about certain things, I'll give some examples. It reminds me of the environment that they grew up in, and they're very proud to have like deconstructed some things. And I do think that they have, and the environment that they grew up in was rough. It wasn't fair to them, but I want to figure out if there's a way for me to address these issues with them, because like, if I'm going to continue interacting with them, there are other issues there, but one of them would be this, because it impacts how they interact with other people, how they interact with social issues. Like one example is like, they have talked about, they're like, yeah, like I support gay people, I have gay friends, but like seeing gay men kiss makes me feel uncomfortable. And like another example, like I've been out to them, like I'm non-binary, I've been out for more than a year and a half now. And I have not audibly heard them. Like, I don't know if they're doing it to other people, but they do not use my pronouns. They do not use the right name for me. And like, it's been a long time. And also like another thing that really set off alarm bells for me is they've talked about like, yeah, like I obviously think there should be equality between like, talking in a binary sense, like between men and women. But I do think that there are certain roles that are better suited to men and women, like intrinsically. So a lot of these, I think, come from their, like the way that they grew up. And there are some other ideas they have around like hierarchy within families and stuff. And I'm just trying to figure out the best way to address some of these things with them that like won't make them feel like terribly defensive, because like I do understand that the environment they grew up in, again, it sucked. And they have
Okay,
made
let me try to draw
progress.
you in a little bit, Del. So what you're saying is that you feel they hold to some, would you even say they're, even if they don't realize it, bigoted, or I think regressive is the word that was used in your call description, and you want to be able to approach them out of concern to maybe help lead them into better ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say
I'm
so,
not,
especially because like they do want to be a progressive person, it seems. It's just they haven't fully, it seems like they haven't fully recognized where some of those ideas come from foundationally. And so I want to figure out a good way to draw attention to like, hey, maybe you should consider where that thinking comes from for you.
Well, I like to start at points of shared humanity. Look, I don't like seeing guys kissing. I don't like seeing girls with that kind of stuff. I've seen hetero couples. I don't want to see making out. It makes me uncomfortable. It's not about how my, whatever feeling kicks up in my gut. It's really more about what I know about the wide, wild spectrum of human sexuality. It's more about what I know about the importance of humanity in all of its many shades and varieties. It's about celebrating the right of other people to be able to be who they are. If I don't want to see this or I don't want to see that, if something like that wells up, you might be like, but there are also a bunch of hetero people I wouldn't want to see doing it either. I think more than that, I think we can say to people, I think we can be like, hey, I want what you want. I want a place where people can live in equality and safety. I want a place where I don't have to sit around and judge people. And I think you start with what you have in common. Takes them off the defensive. They're not pushed back on their heels. They don't feel in any way attacked. They feel related to, because they're like, oh, you get me, right? They'll get me. And then I think once you've established that rapport, then I think you make it more personal. This is how I want to be addressed. This is my name. This is how my name is known. This is the name I want to be called. And I feel disrespected, and use the word I quite a bit. If it was me, I would be using the word I. I feel disrespected. I don't feel seen. I feel frustrated whenever I am not called the name that is my name, when the pronouns that I've asked to be used are not used. And I want you to know how much it means to me to be able to live in this world, living in my own skin, and have people acknowledge me for who I am. And this is part of that. And I think if you communicate it to that in that way, it may set off a light bulb in them. Maybe they're not totally aware of how dismissive their approach to you has been. And for you to come forward and just say, hey, look, I have value. This is how I identify. This is who I am. And when you don't acknowledge that, I feel that you invalidate me. I feel that you are dismissing me and in some ways dehumanizing me. I think a lot of people would hear that. I don't know. Do you think your people would receive that, Del?
I think it's possible. I think if I approach it that way, I might have some luck. I'm just a little bit worried because, like, I come from a very different background than they do. Like, the home that I grew up in was not particularly religious. I don't have a religious background. I've been pretty much a lifelong atheist. And I would say there's always, things to be, like more skeptical about maybe. Like, I don't want to give myself too much credit. But like, I would say I've also been like decently skeptical throughout my whole life, like
I'll buy that.
Decently reflective.
I'll bet you have been.
So.
Let me throw this out too, and then I'll let you finish. I'm gonna hand you off to Forrest. I'm gonna shut my mouth. I would also include this in the conversation that we just did, right? Where you're not saying you are offending me or you are frustrating me because you won't abide by my wishes, but instead saying I feel that you are not hearing or seeing me. I would also include this question. If you were to use my name that I want used, and if you were to use the pronouns that I'm comfortable with, what does that cost you? What does that take away from you if you just take that one step and to abide by my wishes? What would it cheat you of if you didn't do it? I would be curious to see how they would approach that, because really it's a victimless thing, right? I mean, no one's hurt. There's no reason not to do it. So I think if you're like, well, what does it cost you to simply do me this kindness? I think that might help to take another couple of bricks off the wall. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll shut my mouth, but I wanted to throw that out.
Thank you, Seth.
Yeah. I don't know, Forrest, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, so
what
I
a
would
stupid
build off
question.
Of that. Yeah, I would build off
Forrest
of that a
always
little
has
bit.
thoughts, of course.
He always has thoughts.
Right?
Yeah.
I literally can't stop the shit. So I think like having heard all this and just thinking about, I don't think that your family is bigoted. I think they're comfortable. And there's a lot of times in which it's difficult to tell those apart. And so when they're progressive and they're trying to say, they're saying, yeah, we support gay equality. They have that humanitarian side. They're like, hey, these people are people and they need to be treated like people. As long as it's not in my space, as long as I don't have to change myself, when it's easy and comfortable for them to advocate for somebody else's humanity, that's fine. But when it affects them and when it requires them to step outside of their comfort zone, well, now it's a bit too much. And this is something we see a lot with, I'm not trying to box in your parents here, but like we see this a lot on TikTok and whatever with white liberals who are like, yeah, I'll stand up for Black Lives Matter and all this stuff. I put a black square on Instagram, but I'm certainly not going to any rallies and I'm not donating any causes. And if I see somebody getting beaten up on the street, well, they probably shouldn't have committed a crime. And it's like that kind of thing. So like when it gets to the edge of their comfort zone, they stop being as progressive. And I think that is where I would be focusing my efforts. I think Seth is right when he talks about, asking them, what does it cost you to use my preferred pronouns, to use my preferred name? But I also think you should ask the other side of that question is, what do you gain by doing it? This costs you nothing, but you are earning my trust. You are earning my love and my attention. And the thing is, like, I would reinforce that. I love you guys so much. And even though I am uncomfortable in ways that you don't understand, I'm still trying like hell to have a relationship with you. And I consistently feel disrespected and dehumanized and overlooked and ignored and belittled, like as if I'm a silly kid playing fairy tales, when you cannot acknowledge something that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And I love you enough to step outside of my comfort zone for you. I'm asking you to do the same thing for me. And maybe we can meet in the middle, where maybe you just start seeing me the way that I am asking you to see me, rather than the way that you are used to seeing me, because I'm a grown up now. And that's how this works. And so showing like, hey, there's a difference between the cost benefit analysis here of what we're talking about. There's a difference that you can measure in how I am going to be as your child. And it is a positive difference. Why is that not going to be good enough for you? And then start from there, setting some accountability boundaries. You know what I mean? Like, hey, this is where we need to be. And if it doesn't happen, here's what you will be losing. It costs you nothing and gains you such a better relationship with your child to treat me the way I'm asking you to please treat me. And it will cost you so much and gain you nothing if you treat me the way that you want to treat me, that makes me feel small. If you continue to hurt me, then you are going to lose some of your relationship with me. It will cost you your relationship with your child, and you will gain nothing. But if you can just step outside of your bubble for me, for someone you love, and just fucking call me Dell, then you will gain a better relationship with your kid and lose absolutely nothing but maybe some old outdated heuristics that you should have lost a long time ago anyway. And because you're a good person who thinks that they're progressive, you should be happy to lose. That's how I would frame that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is something that's probably going to be my approach, because it sounds like that's going to be the best way to like connect with them emotionally without putting them on the defensive. Like going back to what Seth said about using like I feel terms, just like coming from that place of like expressing how I feel, I think is going to be the best approach. So
don't set unrealistic expectations. If it goes south, and it might, don't punish yourself. Secondly, I wouldn't get into a massively long, drawn-out exchange, especially at the beginning. I would make the first conversation relatively short. I think part of the strategy is almost a street epistemology strategy. We're not going to build Rome in a day, so I think you're planting a seed, and you're changing how they're thinking about it. And then you move on, you change the subject, gotta go, have a nice day, I'll see you tomorrow. But then they have a chance to sort of process this in the gears of their own machine without you in the room. And then I think you can have a more in-depth part 2, part 3, and part 4 conversation down the way. So don't try to build Rome in a day. And if things go south, don't let them suck you in. Try not to get to the point where everybody's screaming and it goes on for 3 hours. Nothing good will come of that. So once you situationalize and you run some scenarios, just kind of be prepared. Just go in and then call us, because I'm so desperate to know what's going to happen next. You let us, if this goes down, you have your people call our people and we'll talk. Okay, Del? Would that be all right?
You got it. When I have an update, I don't know when it'll be.
No rush.
But
if
I do, I'll try to get a hold of you.
All right. Send us nothing else. Send us an email. Send an email to the line. Just whatever. But don't rush it for us. But I'm just saying, if that happens, I want to know what happened. Okay, Del?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll update you when I have updates.
All right. Be safe out there. Okay.
Absolutely. The two of you as well. Thank you so much, Seth and Forrest. Y'all take care.
See you later, Del.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Oh,
good luck
Forrest,
in biology
he's
school.
So smart. Oh, Forrest, he's so wise. Oh, Forrest, he's so educated. Hi, Seth. Actually, no, she was much more gracious to me, I thought, this time.
First of all, their pronouns are they, you asshole. And second of all,
shit.
I think that
Did I just make my own? I literally broke my own rule.
Just
Jesus,
as bad as their fucking parents, you monster.
I'm telling you.
I think they were very nice to you. They said you were a great speaker.
Was that a slip or was that me being a bigot? And so I think if we gauge intent, hopefully it was that I slipped.
My fault. Hey, I also want to say to Cindy D in the chat, call the fuck in next time I'm on. I host every single fucking Sunday, and I would love to talk to you about why you think that pronouns are stupid when you have, hold on just a second, 1, 2, 3, 4. You have like 5 pronouns in your fucking text there. So call me sometime and tell me why you think pronouns are stupid. You fucking weirdo. I'd love to talk to you. Also, the other person who said that women need men to lead them through religion. I hope you call in next time I'm on too. Lines are closed now.
I mean, that's
because you waited 2.5 hours to say the dumb shit in chat after the lines are already closed. But if you happen to find a spine between now and next Sunday, call in early on the show and talk to me about why you think that men are good and pronouns are bad. We'll have a fun discussion.
Let's see. This may be a short one. I'm going to keep my finger on the drop button, but it's Josh who called from Detroit. No. Yeah, I see Josh in Indiana. Is that right, Josh? Are you with us?
Yeah, correct.
Welcome, Josh. What would you like to talk about with Seth Andrews and Forrest Valkai?
Well, my issue is with Forrest. So,
Hi.
As your claim has been representative of what I've heard from different shows. Basically, I have heard from like people like Arden and you saying that among the marginalized people in the U.S. that trans people are the most attacked and or murdered people.
When have I ever said that they are the most attacked or murdered? I've said they're significantly more likely to be attacked and murdered. Trans people are across the board, trans men and women are 4 times more likely to be the victims of sexual assault, aggravated assault, rape, and murder than cisgender people are. That does not imply that they are the most likely, but they are significantly more likely.
Yeah, it is true that of the proportion, I'm speaking as a homeless person. So in terms of people who are attacked as a homeless demographic, there is a disproportionate amount of attack and murder of people who are trans or identify as queer. However, it is not the case that when you said previously on the last Cus I Wanna, that trans people are murdered at 4 times the rate as any cishet person, that is not true. Most people who are murdered are not trans people, even though there is a disproportional amount of people who are trans who are murdered. And I've heard this from you and Arden saying that most people of the demographic who are marginalized, you don't say homeless, but marginalized, are trans people. And I have a problem with that because there is a narrative among leftist outlets.
I have never
said that.
Second. Yeah, sorry. Arden has never said that, and I have never said that.
Yes, Arden has said that. I've heard her say that on Transatlantic Call-In.
You are just wrong. You misunderstood.
Yeah.
You are just confused because I have never said that.
You have heard us say that the most. Sorry, what you said at the beginning and what you just said again. Tell me if I'm misunderstanding you. Is that we are claiming that trans people are the most attacked people?
I've heard Arden say that trans people are the most attacked people. and I heard you the other day on Cus I
Just a
Wanna that trans
lie.
people are murdered at the
Just
times.
lying.
No,
Just openly lying.
No, I'm not lying. I would not.
Okay, so hold on a second, Josh. So Josh,
Yeah.
let's say that either she or I did say that at some point, which again, can't stress enough, that's not something I would say. Maybe one of us misspoke. Maybe one of us slipped on our words and said something like that. I am now telling you that I have never, ever intended to say that they are the most attacked people. They are the victims of violence at a rate around 4 times higher than cisgender people. That is a true statistic. Where do we go now from here?
So the problem with statistics is that when you can say that trans people are attacked 4 times the amount of cis het people, you're not putting into proportion the amount of cis het people. And I'm saying that the demographic of trans people is three times the amount of, like, from coming from my homeless perspective. There are homeless people who are murdered at 5 times the rate as trans people. And
that doesn't change anything. That doesn't change anything about the statistic that I just gave you. It doesn't put shit into perspective, Josh.
You're diminishing the fact.
I am not diminishing anything. What you are doing right now is called the fallacy of relative privation, which is the idea that if one person is hurt worse than the other, then the more hurt thing, the bigger problem, the bigger issue, that's the real one. That's the one that we should be talking about. That's the one that we should really be focused. When no, 2 people can be hurt at the same time. 2 people can experience injustice at the same time. 2 groups can be harmed at the same time. And we should be focusing on both of them and trying to make things better for both of them, not trying to figure out which one is more hurt. Trans people are victims of assault. I can pull up the studies for you from the fucking Williams Institute, which is at UCLA School of Law, which actually put a publication out about this that I cited in my recent video. I can put that in the chat for you to read through if you like. Like, 4 times more likely to be the victims of aggravated assault, sexual assault, rape, murder, all of these things. That is a true fact. If homeless people are also at a higher proportion of these things, that fucking sucks, and we should be trying to fix that. And also, intersectionality is a thing. Imagine how much worse it must be for homeless trans people then. That's a big problem we should be trying to fix. But it's not in anybody's best interest to sit here and try to nitpick about who gets murdered more when I am telling the truth when I say that these people are disproportionately at risk of violence. And then for you to come in and say, well, so am I. Cool. We should fix that. But I don't get what your issue is or where you're trying to start an argument over this. It's not helping anybody.
I'm not trying to diminish the attack on trans people. I'm trying
and yet you are accusing me, of diminishing the problems of homeless people,
and other people
when I talk about trans people.
Talk about trans people, and the proportionality
I have talked
of
about
attacks
homelessness
on homeless
before.
people are the proportionality of attacks and murder on homeless people are 5 times that of the population of trans people.
Josh,
and every person
Josh,
who is
I
a
have
host,
talked about homelessness before. I have talked about homelessness
no, you have
before.
not.
And
I have been through your videos. You're a liar.
So, yeah.
All right. I'm going to put
you on mute for a second
so you can finish the sentence. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have talked about homelessness before. Sorry you didn't fucking see it, but on this channel, I have talked about homelessness before. So if you didn't catch that one single call out of the many multi-hour shows that I do every single week, there are hundreds of shows that are 5 hours long where I take dozens of calls. Sorry you didn't catch 1 or 2 of them where I talked about homelessness. So sorry. Not that fucking big deal for me. I have talked about it before. But how fucking dare you sit here and whine that we're only sticking up for trans people? What's wrong with you? They are also a marginalized community that is, by your ideas, almost as bad off as you are. And also, you may notice that nobody is currently trying to legislate away the existence of homeless people like we are currently doing to trans people and intersex people as well. So I don't know what your fucking problem is here that you're not getting enough attention. We have advocated for homeless people before. We will continue to do so. I'm sorry that we're not doing it enough for you.
Josh, I'm sorry for your troubles. I mean, homelessness is it's a horrifying thing. And given the state of the nation right now, it's probably going to become.
I've been homeless for 10 years.
I'm speaking
back on mute.
If I may, I want you to know that your plight is not being dismissed. But for you to say to somebody who does, I don't know how many dozens of hours of online broadcasting a week, that they have never spoken about something, you're expecting us to believe that you have tracked every sentence that has come out of their mouth, apparently waiting for the reference that would scratch whatever itch you feel needs to be scratched. And because you haven't heard it personally, they have never done it. Don't tell me that Forrest Valkai is not an advocate for people who are suffering, including the homeless. Don't tell me that he has dismissed this blight upon society where we have not properly taken care of our own, and so many of the other elements that feed into the homelessness issue. Don't tell me that he wouldn't have compassion for someone who was out on the streets, who had been homeless for a number of years, especially. I know, Forrest, he is a man of compassion. He deserves better than to be treated the way he's being treated on the show today. So when I unmute you here, given that context, do you feel like we could maybe treat each other with a little more charity to speak about the fact that both things can be true at the same time? Homelessness can be horrible, and homeless people can be afflicted and be victims of suicide, et cetera, and so can other demographics as well. That's fair, isn't it, Josh?
Yes. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that among the people who advocate and speak about marginalized communities, when I listen to the various shows on the line, the first and last words that I hear are trans, and I rarely hear about homeless. That's not to say that I wasn't trying to say that I never hear Forrest or you or anybody else talk about homelessness. But what I hear in response to issues that are political, starts with trans, abortion, immigration, and it stops at that. And then when I hear about people talking about homelessness, it begins and ends with druggies and crazies. And I know
not
that
on this
neither
show.
of you two,
not in this culture, not in this culture, and not on this show. And we're about the alleviation of suffering. So trans people came up because they're a tremendously targeted demographic, but so are gay and lesbian people and non-binary people, and so are people of color, and so are all kind. We talk about suffering. We talk about people who've extricated themselves from religion, who've gone through religious trauma and the plights that they suffer. There are so many other elements that are sort of under the umbrella of the suffering that we want to alleviate. But at no point, I would wager money, at no point does anyone have any intent of trying to dismiss or ignore or marginalize the plight of the homeless, Josh. And I think Forrest and Arden, and I think
it's about forefronting. But my point is,
Josh, I got to tell you, Josh, I'm pretty disgusted about the fact, 24 to 30,000 people starve to death every single day, and you haven't brought them up once during this call. You're just talking about the first and last words out of your mouth are homeless. So why are you trying to diminish all these people who are starving, Josh?
Because you don't talk about those people either.
Yes, I absolutely do. Now I think you are a liar. If you followed anything that I have said, then you would have heard me bring up that statistic
sitting in my
quite
car,
a bit,
homeless,
especially.
And you think I'm alive.
I'm just going to mute you again, dude, because you cannot control yourself. You say you've been through all my videos. You can judge my entire tenure here on the line to say that I just never bring up homelessness, but you haven't heard any of the countless times that I've talked about 24,000 people a day starving to death, especially when talking to Christians. It's one of my main arguments that I bring up quite frequently. So you either haven't been paying enough attention or you are lying about whether or not you've heard me talk about that before. The point of what I'm saying here is that that's a bigger number than what you're talking about with homelessness here in the US. And yet it's okay for you to not talk about it right now because we're not talking about it right now. We are talking about homelessness right now. And so those are the numbers we're referring to. If we are talking about trans people, you can expect us to talk about trans people, not homeless people, unless homeless people come up, because then we will be talking about homeless people. And if we happen to mention starving people, then we will be talking about starving people. So you can expect us to mention starving people. At no point, if we are talking about trans people, starving people, or homeless people, are we diminishing the plights of those other groups. That's a ridiculous thing to say. And for you to sit here and seriously tell me that I'm being uncompassionate towards you and people like you because I haven't given you enough attention, because I'm trying like hell to speak up for other people who are also suffering and dying, is wholly and immensely inappropriate. I have spoken up for people like you, Josh. I feel for people like you. I have friends who have been homeless. I grew up in poverty. I never experienced homelessness, but I understand enough about it, even if I had never even touched it. I understand enough about it to understand what a big deal it is and to speak up about it, as I have multiple times. But even if I never did, even if I never uttered the word homeless in my entire life, that does not make it inappropriate for me to speak up for other people who are also suffering. It's a ridiculous thing that you're asking for here.
No, Forrest, if I said that you never speak about homelessness, I did not mean that, because you have spoken about homelessness. And I know that you ideologically care about homeless issues. My statement, my issue, my frustration with you and other hosts on this line is that the proportional focus of you speaking about issues has been about other things, and you rarely speak about homelessness on your show.
And as I just brought up to you, Josh, you have not mentioned starving people once during this call. Why not?
Well, you have it in your own channel, so you can't put that on me.
I absolutely
if you want to speak about homeless people, okay. So I know that I am in a privileged position as a homeless person, and there are other more destitute people. I say that to other homeless people. I had someone the other night come up to me, ask for money, and I told them, believe it or not, I'm homeless. And the homeless people population are the first people who want to help but don't know how to help other people who are in the similar or more dire situations. I have never said that you never talk about it. You're misrepresenting what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is that the amount of attention that you give to other issues is disproportionate to the amount of homelessness that is occurring, at least within the U.S.
You just said that a second ago, and I responded the exact same way I'm going to respond now. We haven't been talking about starving people either. I talk about starving people quite a bit, both on my channel and on this channel. I have done so more on this channel than anywhere else, but I have talked about it quite a bit when it comes up and when it's pertinent. And then we talk about other things too.
All right, yeah, it's been 16 minutes. Hang on. As I want to be a good steward of everybody's time. Josh, it's been now 17 minutes. What do you want from Forrest?
I called in to say
what do you want to
I had heard. Yeah, no, I'm directly answering your question. I heard Forrest in the previous Cus I Want to say that trans people were murdered at 4 times the rate as any cishet people. That is not true. That is true.
No. I'm going to draw you back. I'm going to draw you back. He's already answered your question. What do you want us to do moving forward?
I want you to forefront homeless issues instead of trying to forefront the supposed severity of trans or people who people who are able to have money.
All right, hang on. I think if it's all right for us, I'd like to move on. But
yeah, I have a couple things for you to do really quickly.
All right. What I understand, this is in the fore of Josh's mind because it affects Josh personally. It is his world, it is his reality, and he yearns to see it spoken about. I get that part. What I don't get is attacking you and other people on the line because you haven't apparently, so he hasn't heard you speak about it in the way or the proportion that he sees. And then he seems very dismissive of the other context of suffering as a way of, I guess, trying to buttress the one that is on the forefront of his mind. I'm sorry, go ahead, Forrest. You had a thought on that?
Yeah, so I just first of all, how fucking dare you throw out the word supposed there? I have here one of the studies that I cited on from that statement. This is from UCLA School of Law, Williams Institute, and I just put it in the chat as well. This is the headline. Transgender people over 4 times more likely than cisgender people to be victims of violent crime. Transgender people are over 4 times more likely than cisgender people to experience violent victimization, including rape, sexual assault, aggravated assault, simple assault, including, according to a new study by the Williams Institute, UCLA School of Law. In addition, households with transgender person had higher rates of property victimization than cisgender households. They go on to cite specific key findings, talking about specific incidents of violent victimization here. So, here's a study from a law school that you can look at and tell me if they're wrong when they talk about the victimization of trans people. Also, even if this wasn't true, even if I had never talked about homelessness before, talking about trans people and the shit that they go through does not detract from you. Rights and dignity are not pie. You don't lose some when somebody else gets more. Attention, I get. Yeah, we should be paying attention to homelessness a little bit. Sure, we should be paying attention to fucking everybody, Josh. Everybody's got some issues. There's millions of different people out there with all sorts of different afflictions. And as I pointed out earlier, intersectionality is also a major issue here. There's a lot of different people who suffer in a lot of different ways that we should all be talking about. But don't come on here and try to out-woke us because you're mad that we didn't talk about your afflicted group because we were talking to somebody else's afflicted group. It doesn't make any fucking sense, and it's completely inappropriate to sit here and complain that we are trying to advocate for trans people's rights because we're not arguing for yours first. That's ridiculous. And as Seth has pointed out, we have been very clear that the entire philosophy of this network and everybody on it is about ameliorating everybody's lives and improving human rights for everybody. That includes the homeless as well. So even during this call, not this call, pardon me, this show, we talked, I mentioned homelessness as a problem that makes Earth less like heaven and that Christians should be working to alleviate homelessness and to get, I brought it up during this fucking show. So sorry that I don't take your argument here seriously, dude. It's just not appropriate at all to complain that some marginalized people are getting more attention than other marginalized people. That's just so inappropriate. It's just not okay. So I'm done with Josh's call. The fact remains that both homeless people and trans people face a lot of struggles. So if you hear us mention one or the other, maybe think about why. Why might Arden, for example, talk more about trans issues than homeless issues? Why might she bring that up from time to time? I wonder. Ugh.
I got one more. Nasser was called back. You got a few minutes to go full circle. Nasser being our first call, technical issues, and I'm going to click connect and see if Nasser is there. Hello. It's been over an hour. You may need to tap your phone to wake it up so we can hear the sound of your melodious voice. Nasser, are you there? Lo, do I see my father. Lo, do I see my mother and my sister and my brother. Lo, they do call to me, Nasser.
They bid me take my place among them in the halls of Waffle House.
Thank you.
Where the brave may live forever.
It's an underrated film. Nasser,
it's a great movie.
It's one of those things where it was for those who don't know, it's a John McTiernan film called The 13th Warrior. Oh, hey! there you are. The 13th Warrior. Anyway, it's worth a watch.
It's a phenomenal
Nasser,
film.
welcome back.
This is so weird.
I know. It's all.
Can you hear us?
A quiver. Nasser, let's finish the thought. What were we talking about before? I'm drawing a blank. This happens as you get older. So.
There's
Fuck, man. Nasser, you've been waiting for almost 2 hours. Hey! Can you hear us?
What do you want to talk about, Nasser? What is it?
Oh my God.
It just wasn't meant
I
to
feel
be.
bad for I feel bad for Nasser. I'm sorry, Nasser. We really tried.
Apparently, there's a kink in the string that connects us, over oceans. So we're not able to finish that call. Forrest, Valkai, any punctuation mark you want to throw on our little chit chats today before we call it a show?
Stephanie Helms was our call screener tonight, who said, as a trans person who is on the brink of homelessness, screening Josh's call was a real treat. So sorry about
Stephanie
that.
deserves and Arden both. I mean, to be able to manage this stuff and to not just stick your head through drywall sometimes it must test you. It must test you.
Yeah.
But you are seen. We see you. So.
You know what, though? I really wish that Arden would stop saying that trans people are the most oppressed group in the entire world and that no one's ever been homeless before. She really needs to cut that shit out. It's just so inappropriate of her. And
I can't believe the most oppressed people in the world. I'm like, there's no reality where I have said anything even approximating that. I know myself and the kind of things I say, and that is not even in the bucket. Like,
calling us both liars to our digital faces, and then also saying that we just need to speak up for his particular group a little bit more. Yeah, we should all do better. And I wish that someday Josh would start taking hunger seriously and speaking more about global hunger, because it's a really big deal. And as soon as he does, he will be an asshole for not talking about the HIV/AIDS epidemic.
Homelessness is bad. Fuck Josh. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't try to out-woke us. You will lose. Thanks so much.
Thanks to
everybody. Do you have any thanks? I'm going to say thanks.
No, I'm good. Thank you so much to everybody for watching and listening, for screening, for just being here and allowing us to rant and ramble. Be safe out there, and we will see you back here on the next show. Take care.